Meeting to order, and also remind everybody that tonight's meeting has all our broadcasts live. Tonight's invocation will be given by Chief Chuck Wonder of the Santa Rita Fire District, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Jacob Castro, a preschool student at Sahuarita Early Childhood Center, and he's banned to run for mayor for the next 10 years. He's the cutest thing you ever saw. I will never have a chance against him. Chief, at this time.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, as we gather today in the spirit of service and gratitude, we pause to give thanks for the many hands and hearts that work tirelessly to make our town a safe, vibrant, and thriving place to live. Lord, we express our deep appreciation for the hardworking staff who serve our town every day, often behind the scenes, ensuring that our services run smoothly, the community's needs are met, and that the vision of the town is carried out. We also take this moment to offer our heartfelt thanks to those who serve on the front lines of public safety, our police officers, firefighters, and emergency responders. These individuals stand ready day and night to protect and serve, often in the face of danger and uncertainty. We are deeply thankful for the sacrifices these individuals consistently make and ask that you continue to lay your protective hand upon each and every one of them as they fill their obligations you have given to them. As we express our gratitude this evening, we would like to say a special thank you to our outgoing members of this council, Bill Bracco and Simon Davis. Their dedication, wisdom, and leadership have been a tremendous benefit not only to the council, but more importantly, our community. Through their hard work and services, they have made lasting contributions that have helped shape the present and will continue to impact the future. Thank you for calling them to this role, and please continue to bless them as they move on to where you have called them next. Lord, we also thank you for the new council members you have placed in this council and ask that you provide your wisdom, encouragement, and blessings over them. May these new members, along with all of our council members, be filled with a spirit of service and commitment, and may their leadership be inspired by the values of respect, compassion, and a shared desire to build a brighter future for all who reside in this community. Finally, Lord, as we enter into this season of Thanksgiving, we thank you for the many blessings and abundance you have provided us all. But most importantly, we thank you for the gift of your Son, Jesus Christ, and promise of everlasting life. Bless this meeting and all who are gathered here this evening. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chief. Jacob, now you're going to know why the podium was so low, and he had to wrench his back.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under one God, and justice for all.
Thank you.
Good job.
Tonight I'm going to begin with a proclamation down at the podium, and afterwards I'm going to be doing saying a few words for Bill Bracco, so the council members, then we'll be doing the swearing in of our new council members. So it's your choice. You can come down with me for the proclamation and stay down there for Bill and the swearing in, or after the proclamation, come down and join me. So your druthers. Now we're going up. Not much. Oh, thank you. This is his last chance to get at me, so. I know. And I like the chief's words because I'm going to be doing a proclamation for Thanksgiving month. And also, I think it's appropriate because, giving thanks to both Bill and Simon for their service, and also thanks for people that are willing to step up and run for election. We'll be swearing in 4 people. So whereas the U.S. Continental Congress proclaimed a day of Thanksgiving on November 1st, 1777, quoting, "For as much as it is the indispensable duty of all men to adore the superintending providence of Almighty God and acknowledge with gratitude their obligation for him, for benefits received, and to implore such farther blessings as they stand in need of." Whereas George Washington issued a presidential proclamation on October 3rd, 1789, establishing a day of public thanksgiving, quoting, "Whereas it is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey his will, and to be grateful for his benefits, and humbly to implore his protection and favor. And whereas President Abraham Lincoln proclaimed the day of Thanksgiving on October 3rd, 1863, to be celebrated in the last Thursday in November, quoting, as a day of thanksgiving and praise to the beneficent Father who dwelleth in the heavens. And whereas Franklin Delano Roosevelt proclaimed in 1942, designated the fourth Thursday in November as Thanksgiving Day. Whereas in 1887, President Ulysses S. Grant signed into law the Holidays Act, establishing as one of the first federal holidays. And whereas President John F. Kennedy signed his Thanksgiving proclamation on November 5th, 1963, quoting, "Let us therefore proclaim our gratitude to Providence for the manifold blessings. Let us be humbly thankful for inherited ideals, and let us resolve to share these blessings and those ideals with our fellow human beings throughout the world." And whereas after 4,000 years of a rich and diverse cultural history, Sahuarita was incorporated into the Arizona Territory on February 24th, 1863. That was your birthday, Bill, wasn't it? No, I'm teasing. And whereas under President William Howard Taft, Arizona became the Union's 48th state in 1912. And whereas Sahuarita was incorporated as a town in 1994. Whereas the town of Sahuarita is blessed to be a beautiful and safe community with solid infrastructure, a prosperous growing town, and a diverse economy. Whereas the town of Sahuarita embraces and affirms the lofty sentiments of gratitude so eloquently expressed by our previous presidents in their proclamation, and thanks to the myriad of blessings bestowed upon the United States of America. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Tom Murphy, the mayor of the town of Sahuarita, on behalf of the town council, do hereby proclaim the month of November, Thanksgiving month, in testimony whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the seal of the town of Sahuarita on this 18th day of November 2024. Congratulations to November. Excuse me, we have to move on.
No, I am so old, I remember when the Dead Sea was just sick.
There you go. See what I'm going to miss after this? So if Bill and my fellow council members would please join me down here at the podium. So tonight we have the honor and privilege of recognizing Bill Bracco for his service in the town of Sahuarita. Simon is also coming off the council, but he's traveling, so we will do his recognition in December. I'll start with a little background about Bill, and I'm going to be really nice tonight. That was my only job at him earlier. Bill moved to Sahuarita in 2005 from the Washington, D.C. area and was elected to the town council in 2011. Serving as vice mayor from 2013 to 2016. His career in information security, including founding Sprint's computer incident response team and managing that global data security operations center, involved in supporting the national defense and intelligence community. A retired U.S. Army Reserve, I almost said Air Force, Army Reserve major with 21 years of service. Bracco has a BA in sociology from Fordham University and an MS in systems management from USC. After relocating to Arizona, Bill started a service business in Tucson and became an advocate for simplifying procedures to support local economic growth. His leadership in business expands to promoting cross-border relations with neighboring states and Mexico. In 2020, Bill was elected chairman of the Green Valley Sahuarita Chamber of Commerce, and he is, and his lovely wife, Ann, are active and volunteers with the American Legion and enjoying motorcycling, hiking, and family time. And for me personally, this is a sad day. I had the great fortune, when I wasn't on the council, being part of an independent expenditure campaign that actually helped Bill get elected. And then I would have never known 4 years later or so, I had the privilege of serving with Bill for these past many years. You know, you've been an advocate for, especially, I remember our times during the pandemic. We only had one virtual meeting, every one of them, because of the philosophy we're here to serve our residents, and we were going to do that in person, no matter how we had to make it happen. And I've so appreciated you always having my six during difficult votes and times. So you'll be a great loss, but I know you're not going anywhere. You just banned the town council meetings for you are on Tuesday from this part forward instead of Monday. But thank you, Bill. Really appreciate it very much.
And Tom was also the best man at our wedding.
Oh, yes.
I'd like to just say a few words, and this is mostly going to be geared towards the council. It's been an honor and a privilege to serve the town that I love for over 13 years. This is a thankless job, so I want you all to be prepared. If you ran for your seat to be appreciated or get invited to events, you may want to rethink your options. In my opinion, the main purpose of government is to protect individual liberty. I want to remind the council that just because you can do something that affects the lives of our residents doesn't mean you should. Know when to take action and when not to. Every time you pass an ordinance or a policy, you're reducing the rights of our constituents. Government, by definition, is force. When our constituents approach you, and it is generally for an issue that serves them and their neighbors, your job is to balance their wants and their desires with the wants and desires of other constituents. You need to balance those desires with the current law and the rights of others and what is best for the town of Sahuarita. That is the job. Our form of government is a constitutional republic and not a democracy. You do not have the luxury to take a poll of who likes an issue and who doesn't. You're hired by the residents to make decisions on behalf of all, taking all issues into consideration and making the best decisions for the town as a whole. A democracy can create tyranny of the majority. You are here to keep that from happening. I'd like to show a quick video.
A democracy is a political system in which the people periodically, by majority vote at the polls, select their rulers. The rulers then have absolute power to make whatever laws they please by majority vote among themselves. In a constitutional republic, the people also, by majority vote at the polls, select rulers, who make laws by majority vote among themselves. But the rulers cannot make any laws they please because the Constitution severely restricts their lawmaking power. The ideal of a democracy is universal equality. The ideal of a constitutional republic is individual liberty. In this century, great strides have been made toward the goal of subverting our republic and transforming it into a democracy. The foremost tactic of the subverters is subversion of language. By calling America a democracy until people thoughtlessly accept and use the term, totalitarians have obscured the real meaning of American principles of government. Writers of the Constitution were anxious to safeguard liberty against dictatorship, monarchy they called it. But their chief anxiety was to protect the country against democracy. Edmund Randolph, delegate to the Constitutional Convention from Virginia, said the general object of the convention was to provide a cure for the follies and fury of democracy. Elbridge Gerry and Roger Sherman, delegates from Massachusetts and Connecticut, urged the Constitutional Convention to create a system to eliminate the evils that flow from the excess of democracy. Alexander Hamilton, delegate from New York, said, "We are now forming a Republican government. Real liberty is not found in democracy. If we incline too much to democracy, we shall soon shoot into a monarchy." John Adams, one of the giants of the American Revolutionary period, said, "Democracy will envy all, contend with all, endeavor to pull down all. And when by chance it happens to get the upper hand for a short time, democracy will be revengeful, bloody, and cruel." America was founded not as a democracy, but as a constitutional republic. We pledge allegiance to the republic for which our flag stands, not to a democracy. The Constitution requires a republican form of government for all states, but does not mention democracy, and neither does the Declaration of Independence or the Bill of Rights. Woman asked him what kind of government the convention had given America, and Franklin replied, a republic, if you can keep it. Very old and very wise, Franklin saw through the mists of time to the day when Americans might trade their freedom in a constitutional republic for the promise of government guaranteed equality and security in a democracy. And beyond that, to the day when democracy inevitably degenerates into dictatorship, guaranteeing nothing but poverty and serfdom for the people it robs and rules.
You need to keep attracting businesses to develop a robust local economy with well-paying jobs. Contrary to popular opinion, you cannot bring businesses into the town. All you can do is remove the obstacles that help businesses start and thrive. That is the only way for the town to truly grow into a town where we can live, work, and play, and not just be a bedroom community for Tucson. You should always do the right thing for the town for the right reasons and not be intimidated. That is the job you signed up for. That is the job you chose to run for. Playing politics shouldn't be at the local level. You should talk to our constituents, and they will tell you that they are very concerned about the presidential race, the senatorial race, the congressional race, and the state races, because they believe these jobs have had a great impact on their lives. We know the local council can also have a significant impact on their lives, but we have a history of being judicious in our exercise of that power and authority, as it should be. Please remember, there is no such thing as government funded. It is taxpayer funded. Tax revenue does not belong to the government. It's provided and in many cases taken by force from our constituents. Make sure you use it for the right purposes. Do not take it for granted. Our constituents are providing you with tax dollars out of their pockets that they work very hard to earn. Do not waste them or ever trivialize this social contract. Please do your homework. You will be hit with a great deal of information before each meeting. Study it. Get your questions answered by staff if necessary, and make the best decisions for our town. In conclusion, I wish you the best of luck and Godspeed. Don't make me come back here.
Good try. Brendan?
Oh, there you go. He wanted to say a couple of words.
Good evening, Mayor Murphy and members of the Sahuarita Town Council. On behalf of the Southern Arizona Home Builders Association and our more than 300 industry members, I want to express our heartfelt gratitude to Council members Bill Bracco, and I wish he was here this evening, and Simon Davis for their dedicated service to the town of Sahuarita. Councilmember Bracco, your distinguished military career and your entrepreneurial spirit have left an indelible mark on this community. Your leadership as chairman of the Green Valley Sahuarita Chamber of Commerce has strengthened ties between the town and the Great Tucson area. Your focus on simplifying processes for businesses and promoting economic growth has been invaluable. Thank you for your tireless commitment to building a brighter future for our region. I wish he was here to hear these remarks, but for Councilmember Davis, as a former firefighter, your 28 years of the service with the Green Valley Fire District, culminating as fire chief, reflect your lifelong dedication to protecting and enhancing our community. As a consultant and advocate for firefighters across Arizona, you've had a steadfast voice for those who dedicate their lives to public safety. Your insight into the history and growth of Sahuarita has provided wisdom and perspective that will guide us for years to come. Thank you for your service and leadership. Tonight, I'd also like to warmly welcome Kimberly Lisk and Ed Lytle to the council. SABA looks forward to working with you as we continue to collaborate on initiatives to foster growth, strengthen our economy, and enhance the quality of life for all who call Sahuarita home. To all of you on council, thank you for your commitment to this community. Together, we will continue building a stronger and more vibrant Sahuarita. Thank you.
this, so I'm not going to read all these because I may not say something. No. Then we have our going away cactus that died. Bill Bracco, in grateful appreciation for your years of outstanding service and dedication to the town of Sahuarita, May 23rd, 2011 to November 18th, 2024. Guys. No, we're going to.
Out and making sure I'm really dead.
And at this time, we will be having our special, swearing-in event of the council members elected in the primary election. First, will the town magistrate, Maria Aviles, council members Stephen Gillespie, Diane Priolo, Kimberly Lisk, and council member-elect Ed Lytle, please join us at the front. So, Dr. Gillespie, Diane, we're the three observers on the side. Yes.
Ready? Sure? Yes. Positive? Okay. I'll ask you to go ahead and please raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, state your name. Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona, and the ordinances, resolutions, and rules of the town of Sahuarita. That I will bear true and faithful allegiance to the same, and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of council member of the town of Sahuarita, Arizona, according to the best of my ability. So help me God, or so do I affirm.
Congratulations. We're going to take a short recess. There's some refreshments, but they can't have refreshments till they turn around and sign the paper so they don't escape after the swearing in. So we'll take about 10 minutes. Thank you. Oh, yes.
Chile for like 2.5 years with Amy, so I
Yes.
brought my business.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Really love to sit down.
Sure. Yes, I do. I do know. Yes. I would love to do that. Absolutely. And what we can do is we can get you on, let's get you on an agenda, because the only way you can meet with all of us together is at a council meeting.
Okay.
Because we break open meeting.
I know that, 'cause I sit on the outdoor lighting program.
Oh, okay. So this is my daughter, Kiara.
That's why you were great.
So no, I'd love to, get you on one of the council agendas. So just kind of, reach out. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, yeah. The only thing you have to be, not to share, but Dan shares your paper gets all over it. He may want to. Oh, okay. So you're good. Good. Oh, that's. apologize, I didn't introduce, on behalf of Councilmember Lisk, her previous town manager flew all the way down from Washington to be here. Everybody got a chance to see her, but, oh,
Wait.
well, tell her we did mention her, okay?
So I just have a question, Shane. If I move to, the East Coast, are you coming when I get like to there?
That's really not on the agenda. I can't speak to that question.
So we'll begin, Madam Clerk, with a roll call.
Councilmember Gillespie.
Here.
Councilmember Lisk. Here. Councilmember Lytle. Here. Councilmember Morales. Here. Councilmember Priolo. Here. Vice Mayor Egbert.
Here.
Mayor Murphy.
Here.
Quorum present.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Next is the
Mr.
call.
Mayor?
Oh,
Sorry to interrupt.
yes.
Just housekeeping, red light off means your mic is working.
Right.
Okay, so, and make sure that those are on when you talk into the mic.
Yeah,
Thank
they
you.
put a nice little identifier, red light is off. Thank you. Call to public is now open. Individuals may speak for 3 minutes. Spokespersons 10. The council cannot discuss matters not on the agenda. However, at the end of the call to the public, council members may respond to criticism, request staff to review the issue, or add topic to a future agenda. And what I'm going to do for item for Noah, about the bond one, because the agendized item is about the canvassing of it, it's not about the subject. So come up to call to the public and speak on that one during the call to the public. Thanks.
I'm Noah Sundberg, and I'm asking those that voted for that bond to be put on the election to resign. Just like I emailed you about it, it was wrong. It was not representing the people. It wasn't doing what we needed. We have a 30-year history of fiscal responsibility and not putting out general election bonds. And you guys voted for the first time in 30 years history, and you said you had the support of the people because of the flawed surveys. You took bad advice from your manager you hired, and I'm asking you to resign because it wasn't what the people wanted. It clearly wasn't. The election that mattered, the poll that mattered was the election, and you clearly were not in the right. And you put us in fiscal risk by trying to put a bond out there, which we've never done before, which we've been proud of our fiscal responsibility, and you did it, and you shirked your responsibility saying, it's the people's choice. Secondly, now that it's been done, I've read the paper and I've read the town statement. You want to double down. You say maybe we'll do, what it says in the paper, quote from Dillian Murphy said, future bond isn't off the table, calling bonds one of the many tools in the toolboxes. Mayor Tom Murphy said, finding a plan B would be where the staff goes for the town council to get direction. I want you to take an introspective and say, why were we so confident and so wrong? Why have we done what we've done? Why shouldn't we do better? Why shouldn't we know? The town manager said that the staff had its A game in this planning, in this design. Well, you didn't. It wasn't well accepted by the people. It should never have been voted for. It should never have been put on the ballot. It was a misuse of your jobs. You are supposed to represent us. We are a representative government, as we heard today, to represent us fairly. And you did not represent us well. You were not representing the interests of the people. And I'm asking that you guys do what you should do when you realize we are not in the voice of the people. We did not represent them well. We did try to put a huge tax on them. We didn't listen to what they were saying. We made up our own way to force what they were saying to be what we believe. And we're not interested in thinking about it now because we're looking for the next opportunity to do it again. So rather than look for the plan B or look for how we can put another bond on, resign. Thank you.
Thank you. The other agenda items are, the other call to publics are for agendized item. Would anybody like to address the council on an item not on the agenda? Seeing no movement, I will close the call to the public and move to item number 8, which is the council and town manager brief summary of events. So since we have 2 new members, Councilman Lytle on the end down there, I'll let you begin if you want to. You don't have to report on anything since probably you're 1 hour in, but if you wanted to say some welcome remarks or whatever you'd like to say, this is your opportunity. Thank you. Oh, you have to push the light. So when the red light's off, that means it's on.
Okay, I still don't have much to say. I like to listen. But I do have to thank the town of Sarita for having me here. Between the town and my God, this is what I am. I love the town. I've been here for a few years, and I'm gonna be an ear for the people. That's what I can say.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having you. Councilmember Lisk? No, I usually do, but since you're both new, you're getting first shot at it.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the people that voted for me. I've only lived here a little over 2 years, and it was a way of getting involved in a community and getting to know a community. And so it was like, oh, I should run for town council. So I'm looking forward to serving the constituents here in Sahuarita and getting to know everybody and getting to know how everything works here. So I'm excited. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Councilmember. Debbie, do you have anything? Diane? Dr. Gillespie? Yep.
I had the great pleasure of standing in for the mayor on Saturday at the charter party for our new Kiwanis Sarita club that has just started. They were incorporated in June of this year, and so this was their first party, or their first event. And it was a pleasure to meet such amazing people in our community that have a desire to serve, and specifically the children of the town. And I was dragged in high school by my best friend to Key Club, which is the high school version of Kiwanis. And she's like, I'm coming, why don't you come? It was a charter day, like they were just starting. And I walked out of that meeting as president of the Key Club. And so it was a joy to be able to say hello to the new Key Club members that were there and to see the Kiwanis members at that event, and to see that part of the reason why I believe some of the things that factored into me running for council and being involved in the residents and trying to do my best in serving the residents of the Sarita probably came from starting out in high school with Key Club because of the desire to serve. So thank you for giving me that opportunity while you were out of town.
Appreciate that. And also, you stepped in for me, which I appreciate. A lot of people know, went by the name of Arthur at Fry's, the bagger. He just, was 93. He passed away recently. He would be the smiling face, serving popcorn for donations over there. I called him my sort of my unpaid campaign manager, because every time I'd go to Fry's with my daughter, he would introduce me to the other checker and the checkout person and person down the line. And it was sad to, but you know, he worked trying to bring joy to the community for so many years. So thank you for going on his tribute of life on there. And you know, and you could tell. Fortunately, I had an opportunity. I came across him one day, and it was his actual birthday. And I posted about it, and please, if you see him this day, go there. And it was the most likes I have ever received on Facebook, because everybody knew him and went out of their way to say hello to him. But I think we were the recipient, the benefactor of that, from the joy that he's, had spread. So I hope I'm anywhere at 93. So that's a good thing. And also, I did want to do a shout out on Spooktacular, our hay maze. A lot of effort went into that from Park and Rec, so I appreciate everybody's effort on that. Our reminder, our next meeting is Monday, December 9th. We may have a special meeting just to canvass the election, but our normal next meeting, regular meeting, is Monday, December 9th. And Mr. Dilly, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, just two things. Winterfest is coming up. Want to wish you guys all a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving. What a great time of year. I wish this season could be the whole year round,
whole
right?
year.
And then I'd like to ask Devin to come up and just give you a quick update on the park fields. Some things have transpired over the weekend, and we'll give you a quick update.
Thanks. Welcome, Devin.
Mayor Murphy, members of the council, thanks for having me. Councilmember Lisk, Councilmember Lytle, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for letting me give you an update. So, as you guys are all aware, we're dealing with a challenging situation at our fields. just to bring everybody up to speed, at the end of October into the first part of November, our parks team was completing our overseeding process for the fall. We had no idea, didn't realize that within that compost there was some safety hazards. Best way to describe it, everything from glass, metal, nails, and a significant amount of it that was applied to 10 fields across our park inventory, 6 multi-purpose, 4 ball diamonds. Since that occurred, our parks team has been working to try to clean up. We actually just on Friday of this last week met with our local servicer as well as the manufacturer from Phoenix. They're actually mobilizing a team to start taking over the cleanup efforts on our behalf. And they did also assure us that they would be making the town whole for the impacts not only to the town of Sahuarita but also to the user group. So we're working actively to figure out, one, how do we get the fields playable in a safe manner, working with our registered sports organizations, and then two, as we move forward, we're going to have to do a little bit more work with our overseeding, hoping that the weather cooperates with us. That's a quick up to speed. I think looking into the future, we're attempting a new, we tried one clean, turned out it didn't work. We have a new game plan that's going to involve some street sweepers and hand picking with the manufacturer. That's likely to occur here as a test in the next week, and we'll keep you updated on that process. But then moving forward, we'll definitely be in touch with you all. But I wanted to make myself available for any questions that the council
Well,
may
thank
have.
you for keeping up, with us on what's going on.
Yeah.
I know we'll have Councilmember Lisk and Lytle added to that, as well as our user group, because at the end of the day, that's that's who the folks that are using it. So I know your communication with them has been good, and I'm sure they appreciate, that, to know, bringing them into the fold, on that, because, we ended up getting dealt a bad hand, that everybody's working together on that. Does anybody have any further questions for Devin?
Council, I did want to underscore, we have been working very closely with our major user groups. In fact, the meeting that Devin referenced, having on, last Friday morning, we had a representative from one of those user groups there, a significant user, and we really appreciate that involvement. It helped shape, some of the path forward. So I think that's really important to keep those relations strong. And that's what we're doing.
Thanks. Everybody good? Thanks, Devin. Oh, sorry, yes.
After the initial cleanup, if months down the road more debris is found, will the vendor come back and continue cleanup efforts?
Councilmember Priolo, I don't think I have an answer for you tonight. The situation is ongoing, and we've gotten commitment from the manufacturer that they would fully remediate the problem for us. If I had to guess, we're going to ensure that before we get the community back onto the fields, that we feel comfortable with their help, that the safety hazard has been mitigated. From there, it's going to be time will tell, but I would think that if 6 months down the line we still see some of this material, we'll be active in those conversations with the manufacturer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything
Thank you.
else? Thanks, Devin.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next is our consent agenda, and Madam Clerk, we're still pulling item B, correct, as of tonight?
Honorable Mayor, that is correct.
Okay, so I'll be asking for approval of the consent agenda with just item A, and we expect item B to come back again once all of the paperwork has been taken care of. So I'll entertain a motion of approval with item A.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, item number 10.
Presentation and discussion, providing an overview of the proposed solid waste program and contract.
Thank you. Nalo Nalavali, our Public Works Director, will present this item, and I know we have some consultants here as well, and I have a couple, I think I have one call to the public on that. So welcome and proceed, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for having me here tonight. Just want to point out that we have representatives from our consulting firm, our solid waste consulting firm here with us tonight. We have Scott Pasternak, and we have Jack Simmons. We also have representative from our potential vendor, Waste Connections, here tonight. We have Larry Williams, Ty Toasteson. Close enough. And we have Daniel Flores here with us tonight. So, Mayor, members of the council, it was the plan to try and bring you a finalized contract tonight for your review and for your approval. However, we were looking at it, we were having discussions with our consulting and then our potential vendor, and we thought that we need a little bit more time to make sure that we square away the details for the contract, so that way it will meet the needs of our community. So with that, it is our plan now to hopefully bring you a finalized contract on the December 9th meeting. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Scott or Jack.
So, I'm sorry, Nalo, Mr. Mayor and Council. So what we are looking for from you tonight is direction to do just that.
Right.
To actually negotiate the contract and bring it back to you December 9th.
Yep.
Okay?
Thank you,
So
Shane.
we'll present information. It's all leading to what you'll see on December 9th. But for us to be able to get that to you and do so with confidence that you even want us to go in this direction, we need that direction from you tonight.
Right, and if there's maybe any other qualifying,
Yeah.
clarifying questions,
Sure.
we could do that tonight as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Shane.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council, and congratulations to the new council members. My name is Jack Simmons, as Nalo said, and I'm with Burns & McDonnell. I'm a project manager with them, and we've been working with the town for their RFP process for the solid waste collection. So we'll start right onto the presentation. So tonight, we're just going to go over where we're at in the procurement process. Like Nalo said, we're looking at the contract negotiations, which we'll get to. And can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah, if you're closer, if you can raise
Sure.
the podium on that top right button there. That's a little toggle switch. It'll
you.
raise it a little bit closer to you.
Thank you very much. And then we'll talk about the RFP results, basically which proposals we saw, and then where we're at now in that process. I'll have my coworker, my team lead, talk about the cost of service, and then we'll talk about the next steps for the mayor and council members. And then we'll open it up for questions. So where are we at in the process and where we've been? So you can see we helped with the town on creating the RFP, and this was essentially understanding what the town needed, what their needs were, what the current process is in the town, and how we could strategically help them to collect solid waste and recycling in this town. So we kicked off with some workshops with the town. We ultimately developed a robust RFP to address the town's exact needs. We notified the vendors. We opened it up for them to be able to ask questions so we could release addendums. And then ultimately, we were able to have a pre-proposal meeting, which they asked the questions, and then we ultimately got all the proposals received. So we did evaluate all of the technical, we did a technical evaluation of all the proposals that came in, including of the financial proposals. The town then had their evaluation committee identify the proposer that they wanted to conduct an interview with, and we'll talk about that. And then, as you can see now, we're in contract negotiations. And as Nalo inferred, we're looking at maybe next session to have that for you. So the RFP results. So we had 3 proposers or offerers for this RFP. You can see Waste Connections of Arizona, Republic Services, NWM, or Waste Management, which are all publicly traded companies. So on this slide here, you'll see their range of cost per services for base services. And also at the bottom here, you can see what a typical and current cost per household per month in the town is currently at, based on a study that Burns & McDonnell did previously. So you can see, rather obviously, that the range that is currently being provided to the town, you can see that all the proposers came well beneath that range. So we have the finalists, and that's Waste Connections, and I'd like to introduce Ty Toastenson to give a few words from Waste Connections.
How did he do the second time?
Oh, pretty good. I've had this last name for 35 years, and I hate saying it, so my wife curses me every day for it, but yeah, Tostenson, it's a tough one. Mr. Mayor, Council, first off, again, wanted to introduce myself. I'm Ty. I'm the Division Vice President for Waste Connections of Arizona. Fortunate enough to see our New Mexico, Arizona, and West Texas assets. Staff, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. Just sitting in here, you can tell that you guys really value relationships. And without getting corny or, saying all the cliche stuff, I love garbage. It's because I love the company I work for. And this company for 10 years, and I've moved my family to 5 different states, we value relationships. And very much am excited at the prospect of building one of those relationships with the town here. So thank you guys for having us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Ty. So as mentioned, the town proposal evaluation committee decided that Waste Connections was the vendor to move forward with at this point and to start contract negotiations. So during Burns and Mac's study of the proposals, we decided to outline some strengths of all proposers as well as their weaknesses, and so we want to highlight the strengths of Waste Connections of Arizona. So as you can see, and as you saw on one of the previous slides, and I'll go back real quickly, you can see that they had the lowest and most competitive prices for this RFP, this request for proposal. They also have extensive experience in Arizona. One of the a few towns up in the Phoenix area, and also that they have acquired a local waste hauler right-of-way disposal, which has served Tucson since 2010. They also have a comprehensive waste audit program that allows them to make sure that they're on top of their operations and always improving their operations. Their proposal was very well aligned with the RFP requirements that we asked for. This is something you'll see here and there, and needless to say that theirs was excellent. So for contract exceptions, we found this as a strength. They did not request any exceptions to the templated contract that was in the RFP, which is a very good thing.
Could you expand on, like, contract exceptions, what that would mean in between, like, tonight and when the negotiation would be?
Certainly. Yeah, so not to get too much into the weeds, but in an RFP, you basically have a scope of work, essentially, that says you will perform these services, and then the proposers will detail how they will do that. And as part of that, you'll have an appendix that'll actually be a draft contract that the town typically will rely on for the procurement of subcontractors. So we took that contract and put it in there with all of the typical town's conditions,
Right.
and we asked the vendors if they had any exceptions to them to please state those so that we can understand those for negotiations. And in this case, they did not have any.
Right.
Does that-
And did the others have exceptions?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, the other ones did. Yeah, they had quite a few on some of them. And so you can see the last one, a BAFO cost or a best and final offer. So Waste Connections came back with an even more competitive pricing option, which was excellent. And they were able to reduce the cost for collection at town facilities as well as residential trash collection. They were able to reduce that rate for the town residents. To go back to the executive session from earlier this month, we wanted to address some of the questions that you all had. And so you can see that for holidays, there will be 4 holidays that will be acknowledged by Waste Connections if they get the contract. That'll be Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's Day, and 4th of July or Independence Day. The way that'll work, just to briefly describe it, say for Thanksgiving is coming up here on a Thursday.
Thursday, right.
Yep, the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday services will remain unchanged. Now, the folks that have service on Thursday will now be pushed to Friday.
Right.
If you have a Monday holiday, everyone will be pushed one day, and we will go into Friday service.
Okay.
Any questions on that?
Yep. Everybody clear on that?
That method?
Thanks.
Great. And also, the Waste Connections has put up a very competitive vacation hold. So we understand that Sarita does have some snowbirds, as we call them. And folks come in, and they're not here all year, so why would they pay an extra, or I should say, why would they pay a monthly when they're not here if they don't have to? And Waste Connections put a very competitive vacation hold up here, which can be utilized once per year. And that is essentially you get 90 days complimentary that you can halt your service. You will call the vendor, get your service halted, And then you can return within that 90 days after you call them, and they can reboot your service without a fee, without any issues. If you go beyond those 90 days, there will be a $50 reactivation fee. And then if you go up to the 180 days, you'll resume billing on top of that $50 fee. Any clarifications needed on that?
Everybody,
Certainly.
do you want to go over it again? Do you want that go on over again, or?
I'm not clear about the resume billing after 180 days.
Yes, and
Can't,
do you want to talk? We'll have Waste Connections address your question,
Sure.
ma'am.
And if you could just use a typical, calendar year in relationship to that, based on snowbirds and when they would
Yeah,
typically
absolutely.
leave.
Larry Williams, Sales and Marketing Director for Waste Connections Arizona. To answer your question on the vacation hold, so regardless of the time of year that maybe the resident want to take a vacation or put their service on hold, basically you have 1 to 90 days completely free. There's no charge for that. After 90 days, there's a reinstatement fee of $50. So that's basically just to get the account back into fair standing.
Service, right.
And then after 90 days, we automatically start billing you for service. So the longest you can go without service payments, other than the reactivation fee, is basically 6 months.
6 months, right.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, thank you, Larry. And the last question that we wanted to address was the town events and which ones would be covered under this contract. So as you can see, it's up to 5 events per year would be included in the base rate right now of the recycling and the trash. They would have, each of these events would have up to 3 roll-off containers and 40 carts per event. And then additional containers and carts would be, of course, at contract rates. Do you have any questions on those?
Everybody good on that? Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to introduce Scott Pasternak, the team lead, to talk about the cost of service.
Good evening, Mayor
Thank you.
and City Council, or Town Council members. Scott Pasternak with Burns and McDonnell. And at Burns and Mac, we work with towns and cities really across the country on these types of solid waste and recycling contracting or procurement engagements. And to have an opportunity as you have before yourselves to enter into a contract for the very first time is something that we regard as being a really important consideration for the town. So we definitely recognize the importance of what you all are looking to consider. And so Jack in his slides talked about what the pricing was from each of the 3 companies. And so what we wanted to communicate to you all is what would a full price or fee that would ultimately be charged to the community's residents look like on a per household, per month basis. And one of the questions that is before the town to consider is who should actually be the entity to purchase the carts. So there would be 1 trash and 1 recycling cart. And so we looked at this analysis a couple of different ways. One would be if Waste Connections would provide the carts, and that's shown as scenario number 1. And then scenario 2 would be what if the town would be the entity to provide the carts. And so what we're showing on this slide is the cost of the contracted services, and that includes once a week trash collection, once a week recycling, and also up to 4 times per year collection of large or bulky items, which is a service that is not provided for the most part under the current system.
And just to be clear, that's on top of the 5 town events that was just mentioned in the last slide.
Correct.
I just didn't want that confused with that one.
Yes, that is 100% correct. And then also this includes under the contracted services for Waste Connections to provide the provision of billing and customer service. And so what we looked at is if you would set the pricing for the cart purchase and the town administration the same at $24.50 per household per month, what would that look like over the course of the next 5 years? And so that's what's shown on this slide. And so don't squint too much over these numbers because they are intended to look very similar to each other, but there are some subtle differences. So the one on the top communicates scenario one, which is again the carts purchased by your contractor, and then scenario two is the carts purchased by the town. And so what this is showing is if you would put in place that rate of $24.50 per household per month, as shown by the blue bar, you would have a positive net revenue. And we've also built into our financial model the expectation that that cost will continue to increase, both for the contractor as well as for the town's services for issues like salaries. And so if you do not have a rate increase over the first several years, the amount of that net revenue is going to start to go down year over year, as shown again by that blue bar. And then what we're also showing it via the orange line is how much would you have in your fund balance over that same time frame. So we worked with the town manager and the finance director to just say, what if you started with having a reserve of $250,000, you would over recover in that first year, so that orange line in the first few years would build up to where it would be about $400,000 to $600,000 per year. But if you don't have a rate increase, you're going to start to eat into that fund balance. But the benefit of this approach is that you would likely not need to have a rate increase for about 4 to 6 years, so that you could keep that rate at that $24.50 over that same time frame. But then what you'll see is once you get into year 5 and then 6 and 7, that orange line starts to decrease, and then would potentially go negative in year number 6. And all that means is that somewhere around that time frame, you would likely need a rate increase. Right. But if you could go several years without having that type of an increase, that's really doing pretty good. Yeah. And the other key thing that we wanted to point out, there are some subtle differences between scenario 1 and 2, and probably the best way to see that is if you look at year 7 with where that orange line is. So it's going to be a little bit more negative if you would have the contractor purchase the carts as compared to the town doing so. The reasons for that is that it is going to be a little bit less expensive for the town to purchase the carts, because your cost of doing so in terms of interest rates and not having to earn a return on that investment is the case. Also, you can fix those costs at a steady rate, whereas those costs for the contractor will increase year over year. So there definitely are some advantages for the town to consider purchasing those carts, bearing in mind that the contractor will still have the full responsibility for all of the maintenance and management of the carts, regardless of who owns them.
And would it be correct, because if we purchase them ourselves in the contract, because the useful life is probably 10, well, I've lived here 20 years and I have the same one.
Right.
Not that it's in great condition, but I have the same one. So if you amortize that from a town's perspective, we can amortize it over a longer period, correct?
Right.
As opposed to attaching it to the contract and the
Yeah,
lease.
that's a great point. We would recommend for the town to purchase them, to depreciate that or amortize that over a 10-year period.
Right.
And as you also just mentioned, Mayor, hopefully those carts should last much longer than 10 years, but to be fiscally conservative, 10 years would be what we recommend. But then if you're the contractor and it's only a 7-year contract, then as you point out, you would need to look at that depreciation over a shorter time frame.
Right, thank you.
Mayor?
Yes.
If I could just interject, can you go back to that slide just for a second?
Yes. Well,
Oh, maybe
I
not.
think, yes, I just got to figure out the right button.
Thank you.
This one.
That one?
Thank you,
Okay.
thank you. So if you picture another way, I don't have a diagram on this, but if you picture 2450 as in a bar chart, a portion or a percentage of that of that fee is tied to recovering the cost of the investment in the carts. If we have the contractor acquire those carts on our behalf, a portion of that 2450 is going to go back and reimburse the vendor for that cost. In talking with Queen Creek about their experience over the last 14 years of doing this, because they were in our situation, 14 years ago. I've noticed that they have been able to really, really hold down their increases in rates to their community. It's quite amazing, actually. And I asked, how do they do that? Well, they chose the option scenario 2, where you go out as a town, we use our general fund dollars to pay for that, and then we have the enterprise fund reimburse us as though we had that money in investment.
Right.
So we're earning the same return on that money as we would if it was in the stocks or something. And what the town has done in Queen Creek, what they've done is as they've paid that investment off to the general fund, that capacity still is there in that 2450 that allows them to now move it to help absorb increased costs by the vendor over even a further extended period of time than this. And so, to hear our consultant suggest that scenario 2 is the recommended path, I wanted to add that to the plate in terms of consideration of scenario 2, and I think that's a really good recommendation.
Yep, thank you. Thanks.
Are there any other questions you all have to this point, or specifically about the carts?
Anything on this slide? Nope, I think we're good.
So as far as next steps, the proposed timeline would be, as was mentioned a few moments ago, subject to direction from the council to look to enter into contract negotiations. While there were no exceptions taken by Waste Connections, there are going to be some minor items to incorporate into the contract, such as the questions that council had asked that Jack talked about. So we want to make sure that gets incorporated and accurately reflected into the agreement. There's also the decision of what to do on the carts. So as far as who makes that purchase, so there's a placeholder in the agreement now. So just to clarify that information. And then the intent is to bring the item, subject to your direction, back for consideration at the December 9th meeting, as was mentioned earlier. Another key step after that would be to adopt an ordinance that will essentially complement what will be in the contract, so that it's clear with your contractor as well as the community and your residents in terms of how the program will work. And then the expectation is that the commencement of the services would be July 1st. So that provides sufficient time for everything from the purchase of carts, trucks, communications with your residents, as well as existing vendors, that this transition would be well underway to start up that service in July of 2025. So in terms of recommendations, this slide gives you a sense of what services will be contracted. So your service provider, if you decide to move forward, would provide for the trash, recycling, and bulk collection, customer service, billing, and then even if the town decides to own the carts, or if the contractor provides the carts, your contractor is still responsible for the day in, day out management of those carts. So really the key decision for you all to make is on the cart purchase and ownership. So our recommendations are to move forward with negotiating final contract terms that would then be brought back to you all for approval, then to move into the development of the ordinance to establish your collection system, to explore and procure the process for the direct cart purchase option. And then also it will be important to communicate with residents as well as other key stakeholders in the community about what's happening, and then be able to start that service, which will happen before we know it, in July of 2025. So with that, we'll be happy to answer additional questions that you have.
We can entertain questions. I do have one call to the public, but he was very kind and gave me a list of questions. So I'm gonna touch on those on it, because I think some of it's been answered, not all of it. I think I know the answer to some of them because of our meetings before, but I'll hit on these rather quickly, and we can have both of you up there. I think one's for our attorney. But Debbie, I saw your hand first, if you want to go first.
In reference to the bulk collection, how do you guys facilitate that?
When you say, do you mean the role of Burns and McDonnell or the role of the contractor? Or how does the program?
contractor.
Yeah, how do you guys facilitate that? My question, where I'm going with this is, the city of Tucson just had
Right.
Bulk and Bushy, I think they call it. And when you were driving down I-19, one of the frontage roads before you hit Irvington, I don't know if that was a drop-off point for trash, but for almost a month, there was trash there on that frontage road, and it was horrible. It was on the side of a house, and everybody would just go dump their stuff. I think they just picked it up on last Saturday.
Yeah.
I don't want the town to
No,
look like
and that's
that.
probably because they didn't go with you, right?
You took the words right out of my mouth. Well done. I think I'm done here. Bulk collection. So there's a technique behind it, or the way that we handle it. And basically, we set a date 4 times a year for the community. That is sent out to the community. We market that date. So you have up to, I believe, 2 months to schedule your bulk. The bulk is provided on a key date. You put out your bulk in front of your house on the city street, and then we come through on that day and collect it. It is up to 4 cubic yards. So it's about, if comparing that, it's about 6 dishwashers. So it's quite a bit. And it's vegetation, green waste, appliances, furniture. So it's a lot of that.
No, because I know we'll have zones, so to speak.
Correct.
So how would that work? So the whole town would get picked up on the same date?
Different
for
zones.
bulk?
Yeah, so we schedule on different dates for the zone.
Oh, okay.
So.
Yep. So that includes bulk and regular trash?
Correct.
We'll go by zones?
Correct.
That they'll know.
And I think we designed it so we do 4 zones, Monday through Thursday. So we try
Right.
to keep it within the hours of the time of the town.
Right.
And we provide basically the first week of the month, zone 1, second zone, the second week, and so on that
Thanks.
schedule.
Is that good for you, Debbie?
Yeah, I'm satisfied with that. The only, so are we going to, or are they going to pick the dates, and how much time do we have before, let's say May 15th is the day that they're gonna come pick it up? How soon can we put it out? I mean, I don't want people putting it out 2 weeks before they come.
From a customer service standpoint, when you advertise and they have 2 months to sign up for their date, so you know who to go pick up. Is there customer feedback in terms of, hey, put it out 24 hours ahead, or is there any guidance that way? To the point here is that stuff could be sitting on the corner or the side of the road for 2 months.
Yeah, no, good question. So basically, all we require is that they put it out before 6 a.m. in the morning, but we could add more information to that outreach and education to the resident, making sure that there's a certain timeline that you can't have it out. Maybe, I'm just spitballing here, but maybe a couple days before collection. So if they do their lawn work or whatever on the weekend before, they can put it out maybe that weekend, and then they'll have up to 2, 3, 4 days to be able before we collect it, and that's pretty much the guideline on that.
Yeah.
The enforcement would have to come from the town, so if that's maybe something to add into the ordinance or something
Right.
that.
Yeah, I mean, I think tighter would be, better, because there'll probably be violators anyway. So if we say, 3 days, they may push it to 4 or 5. So personally, I'd rather see it, the night before or the day before. I don't know if I'd want to go much sooner than that.
Maybe make the pickup dates like on a Tuesday or a Wednesday instead of Thursday or Friday, because if we do our yard Saturday and Sunday, it's gonna sit out there till Friday.
The problem is.
We do it Saturday or Sunday and have it picked up like Tuesday, that still gives us Monday to put out whatever else we need.
The problem is if they're going by the zone.
Correct.
They can't do everybody on the Tuesday because they can't do the whole town in one day.
Right, but if you're going by zones, you do this zone.
Mayor and
or do you
council?
have
Oh,
to
I
do
see.
it in different days?
Mayor and council?
Yes.
We're talking to vendors who have done this for this is their profession, and I don't think we really need to get into the weeds. I think it's clear that there's a concern that bulk waste is out there for weeks on end, and we want to have an operational policy and how to address that. One of the The overhead cost is to add an inspector on the payroll for that enterprise fund to go out and help with some of this stuff. Also, to make sure that the diversion rate is, clean on the recycling stuff, and we're not putting a bunch of contaminants in our recycling feeds. So that's all part and parcel to this. But I don't know if we need to get into the weeds in terms of how that's going to look. But the message is loud and clear that there's a concern about having this bulk trash sitting on the curb, for weeks on time, at a time. So thank you.
Thanks. Excuse me. Diane?
So I'd like to know, if you go back to the slide where you showed, I think it was $4.81 for customer service.
No, that's the admin fee.
Admin fee,
That's on top
Yep,
of
right
the.
there.
that's,
No. No, billing is under contract with the vendor. So this is, well, I'll let
yeah,
McDonald
explain that.
Sure.
My concern is, I want human beings for customer service, no chat AI, no complicated voicemail trees where you want to pull your hair out because you have 12 choices before you get to well, if you want to speak to a human being, please press 0. The quality of the customer service and the ease of it, and then are we going to have a staff member on our staff? This was talked about, but I'm not clear what the resolution was. So that if there's a problem at your end, do we have somebody at our end that's going to have direct access to intervene?
I'll let the vendor speak on your operations and how you're responding to the town's expectation of, what we would define as true customer service, and that's having a live person on the other end sympathizing with the customer and what they're experiencing and trying to solve the problem. And then I'll respond on the town's end in terms of what we're going to do.
Yeah, perfect.
And I understand it's dedicated just to our town, correct?
That is customer service. So we do have representatives that are going to solely answer the phones for town residents. So our customer service is 10 short miles from here. So your customer service agents will be able to walk outside and experience the same weather that you guys are having. They won't be in some third world country. They won't be on the other side on the East Coast. They won't be in a different time zone. In fact, some of the customer service agents actually live in the town of Salarita, including our general manager. So this is, you can't get any closer than that.
As all the smart people do, thank you.
Yes, which is very active in the community, something we're very proud about. But rest assured, you're going to have customer service agents that are going to be on call, be able to take the residents' calls, and be able to answer them in the same time zone.
Thank you. And Shane, you want to hit from
Yeah, and on our end, we already have a customer service component dealing with our wastewater service. So this will be an add-on to that. You'll find that there's, and obviously that's a live body that's answering those calls. In that overhead, the town administration, I believe there's 2 new positions, and then there's costs associated with the fact that, our finance department is involved, our legal department's involved, our HR department's involved. And so there's support from that fund to offset those impacts on these other departments. So that's part of that 481, and that's how we'll handle customer service.
Are you good, Diane?
Nope, I have another question. Okay. So, always. So, if there's an issue that develops, a constituent, a resident calls your customer service department, will they have access to a manager to intervene? And
Absolutely, absolutely.
Is
A after-hours on-call system, did you?
Well, what's your structure for how to respond to issues as they manifest? My concern is responsiveness and timeliness.
No, for the most part, I think that probably 80% of the phone calls will be accounting related. So it'll be a matter of, hey, I got this bill, doesn't make a lot of sense to me. A lot of coaching and explaining that outline. missed services. I mean,
That's what I was going to mention.
yeah, I mean, that happens. It doesn't matter who the waste provider is. You know, there's always that chance that you might miss a few homes. There's an outline in the RFP and deliverables that we need to fulfill. So if we miss, we are required to go back and reservice within 24 hours. The great thing about our company and our trucks is that we have a technology called Third Eye. So we have, I believe, 5 cameras on each one of our trucks at service. So we're able to identify whether maybe the resident called up and said, you know what, I had my cart out. I made sure my son took it out and it's out on the side of the road. Well, their son's still in bed and missed that hour that he's supposed to have it out in front of the house. And so, and it happens a lot. So we have that technology in place. We're able to provide that as proof as service to not only the resident, but to the city or the town. And it's a lot of communication back and forth just to make sure everybody's on the same page. So if there's any misses or any problems with service, there's a lot of dialogue goes back and forth with the town.
Okay.
Thank you. And if I can just go wrap it up, would anybody else have any particular questions before I hit these? Because these might be some on there. So one was, how will each resident pay for service through the utility bill directly to the vendor? You want to just touch on billing?
So the billing is sent out on a quarterly basis. We do it in the month before the quarter, mid-month. So it gives enough time for the bill to get to the resident, whether if it goes via mail or online bill pay, paperless billing. So there's a lot of those options that are in place. And then basically gives them 30 days to pay. It's paid upon receipt. So they have 30 days. And then there's a collection policy that goes behind that. It goes up to 90 days. So there's, if it goes past 30 days, it's auto dialer. There's email, a lot of vehicles that we use to send out that messaging. Then after 60 days, we again send out a letter. Got to pay your bill, basically. After 90 days, we will go collect the cart.
Okay.
Okay.
What if a resident wants to, I know the answer to this, but what if the resident wants to contract with another service provider? John, do you want to touch on that? Based on state statute, when a town goes into the solid waste?
As was mentioned earlier, the town will adopt an amendment to the town code by way of an ordinance that will mandate that residential service be through this one vendor. And the state law allows for the town to require that for residential, which is up to a 4-unit, or a fourplex, I suppose. So fourplex, triplex, duplex, and single-family homes will be mandated to use this particular vendor. If you're 5 and above, or if you're commercial, that's totally on the market.
Right. Thank you. And who pays for the return of the waste bin to the current service provider?
The resident does. So after 90 days, we remove their cart, and then there's a reactivation fee to bring the cart back and, again, recreate account for billing. So
What if somebody moves and, moving out of state, and so is there still a charge to have the carts picked up?
No.
No.
Mr. Mayor,
Mayor,
the way I read that differently.
I think the question is written differently.
When I took my test to see if I knew the answers, I read it differently.
So I believe the question is really focused on the customer right now, the resident right now is under one service through, let's say, waste management. And this comes into play. Waste management is going to be required to come out and grab their property. And in so doing, is the resident going to get billed or bear the cost of that collection of that can? What's industry practice on that?
You want to speak on that?
Well, with you all having going from an open system to potentially an organized collection system, I don't think that there's a standard for that particular circumstance. When you do have a situation where if you had a contract already in place and then you were deciding to go to Waste Connections as a new contractor, typically what would happen is Waste Connections would collaborate with that existing hauler, and they would just figure it out between the two of them as far as how to make that work. And oftentimes the thinking there is that, you know, you may be the winning company on one bid, but the next time, you know, the shoe may be on the opposite foot. So in our experience, the companies usually, you know, they may not like it if they're the losing company, but, you know, they usually will try to figure that out. But I think it's a little bit different going from an open system to this one. But, you know, to the extent that you guys would be able to figure that out with any of the other companies who are in the area, do you want to speak to that?
You know, it really kind of depends on the policy in the company.
That's what I was thinking, because
Yeah.
if my contract already says, whether I move out of state or whatever, I change companies, I probably have already agreed to something from that perspective.
So we have a lot of experience in this. I seem to be a connoisseur of starting communities up with our service and where there might be a different provider. And basically, it's the squeaky wheel gets the grease. It's that simple. And if someone argues the fee because the town decided to go a direction that was more beneficial to the residents, I think that they have a more compelling story to be able to have those fees eliminated. But again, not speaking for my competition, I do know that some of them are somewhat aggressive.
Right.
But they also, customer service, if you ask for a manager, they're usually pretty understanding.
Right.
So.
Okay. Debbie?
So it was my understanding that everybody's going through that, to have this, other than fiveplexes and commercial.
Right.
But say, for instance, I don't pay my bill for 90 days and you come pick up my trash, because there's people here that don't have any service, and their trash just piles and piles and piles and piles. And it was my understanding those people are gonna get a trash can and have to pay for it. So what if the 90 days, you guys come and pick up their trash can, now they don't have service and they don't have a trash can and they're going back to making their piles in their home?
Wouldn't that be an enforcement thing?
It'd be code enforcement, but how are we, I mean, is it yet?
Well,
in the
I
code?
think a couple of, kind of have to unwrap that a little bit. If somebody has piles of trash around their home, then you have a code enforcement or code compliance issue. What this ordinance does, though, it doesn't allow for them to hire someone else to pick up their trash. So we would continue to bill them, or they could continue to be billed, they could go to collections, you know, but I suppose someone could sort of self-dump at the transfer station, but at these rates, I'm not sure that's really cost-effective.
Right.
So
You know?
what I'm understanding from you, they're still gonna get, even though their trash can is picked up, they're still gonna get billed?
Yes.
Okay.
They should still get billed because the cost of this is sort of an economy of scale. And so if you can, you know, this isn't, there is no opt-out in this system.
Thanks. For what services does the monthly fee provide? It's waste and recycle, right? One.
Waste to recycle, bulk, events.
In bulk, in events, yep. What size waste and recycle bins are provided for the monthly charge?
95 gallon.
And that's each, right?
Correct.
Mayor?
Yes.
Can I just go back to the question about the scenario where they decide to just stop paying? I just want to make sure our vendor is on board with that thought process, that the expectation is they need to provide, they need to get into this, they need to use this service, and it's really a community decision, which is why we're kind of here today and asking our elected officials to consider this. So if you have a customer that is delinquent, we'll go through the collection process, but the expectation is that service or that bill continues to be on their doorstep.
Yeah, we're very on board with that.
Okay.
Thank you. How to report waste recycle vehicles exceeding the posted speed limit in communities like Sonora Del Webb, which is 25 miles per hour. Can you talk about your,
Awesome
high quality
technology.
of drivers and not
Yeah.
breaking our speed limits?
Yeah, that's another piece of, another layer of information that we provide. So along with our third eye that we have on our trucks, we just all have GPS.
Oh.
And so I can pinpoint exactly what street, what day, at what minute that truck was traveling at what speed limit. And it's a lot of misconception when it comes to our trucks. They're big, they're loud, and they sound like they're going 50 miles an hour. In reality, they're doing 15. And we get a lot of that, especially in our senior communities. Sun Lake's perfect example. I probably get 1 or 2 phone calls through their management, property management, and said, hey, we've got somebody who's complaining about speeds, and we'll go in and I'll put together a screenshot of where that truck was at that address, and be able to provide that. And along with that technology, if our drivers are going beyond the speed limit, there's a informational piece that goes to the manager on service, and it tells him that we have a truck that's going 70 miles an hour on a 45. And the driver is called immediately asking, why are you going that fast?
Well, and the other exciting thing from my perspective, based on what you said earlier about relationship-based, when you have multiple providers and I, as one guy, homeowner, calls, whether it's hydraulic fluid leaking or speeding, I'm one customer, right? When you have a negotiated contract, we have the full power, of the town, and obviously you would probably want, to stay with us, over the long term. So I think there's a higher level of incentive.
For sure.
Incentivization to, you can, a regular company can blow off anybody individually, right? What are they going to do? But a negotiated contract, I think there's power in that if we have these kinds of issues.
Yeah, we're held accountable, and we have 14 different municipalities that we service, city of Goodyear all the way up to Globe.
Mayor, if I can, just a little analogy. The black boxes that these trucks have are incredibly sophisticated. And as was mentioned, at one community, the community ran the solid waste collection. 2 employees were caught sleeping behind the Red Lobster or something like that. And you could pinpoint the time frames that they would sit there for 2 hours or an hour and a half. And so these trucks these systems are really, it's almost like an airliner that you have on these things, and you tell exactly where they're going, how many hours they're operating, fuel, all that stuff. So it's really kind of a cool technology.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to clarify that I'm assuming that's not Waste Connections.
It was a municipally run solid waste
Just
collection
wanted to
department.
cover
Yeah, and we don't serve peanuts and pretzels in our trucks.
And they had tree, yard trimmings, waste, recycle, other things. Is there any limitation, what goes in the can? If there's a little, some sticks and...
Yeah, as long as it's, we prefer to have the lid closed, and that's part of ADEQ, Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, is that they require that the lid seals the body of the container. And so they, when you start having things, I've seen people put hot water tanks in their recycling cart, or palm trees that are 3 times taller. The actual tree with the roots and everything, and they put it in there. But there's safety hazards with that. We pick it up, and there could be somebody walking on the sidewalk, and some of that material falls out, and somebody gets hurt. So there's a great deal of thought that goes into service, just to making sure that we're meeting all safety concerns, and equipment too. It's important that people have an understanding of what they can throw away and what they can't. So,
and one of the other things is, because of having to pay for bulk,
Yeah.
or maybe a hot water heater or things, if you have those 4 times a year, people would take advantage of that, as opposed to trying to game it a little bit, and which I have done.
Yeah, for sure.
Cans up, the lids up. If waste and recycle are included in the monthly price, how many trucks will be going in our neighborhood on how many days? If you want to talk about the zone,
Yeah, so we have service set up for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and they're outlined. There's a beautiful graph that I put together that I got to brag about in our RFP and our response, and it shows exactly what zones, how many people are in each one of those zones, which is about 2,500, and it basically shows what day of service is on that. It's both trash and recycling on the same day, And so you only have to worry about carts being
Oh,
out.
I didn't know that. It's the same day.
Yeah.
Oh.
Two different trucks.
You can't trick them.
That's
They've
right.
got multiple towns they're working with.
And one of the reasons why we pioneered that with the town of Queen Creek in 2010, and that's to basically keep carts off the street. You only have one
Right.
day to worry about trash and
Yeah.
recycling, and it really cleans up the neighborhoods. There's no trucks running around throughout the whole week. It's just
Yeah.
one day to focus on trash and recycling.
I mean, I was happy in my neighborhood to go from 6 to 2. Now I'm actually down to 1 one day.
Right.
Because, if you went to one provider, I was thinking it was going to be a, Monday, Thursday, which it is now for me. Huh.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of, reduces safety concerns. There's not 8 trucks going through the community. There's one.
Right.
The quality of life is so much better. It's like your guys' mission statement. 2 key aspects of that is safety and quality.
Right.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mr. Mayor, members of
yes.
the council, one additional benefit that we really didn't discuss in all the meetings that we've had up to this point, in terms of moving from a non-regulated system like we're in today to a regulated system, is that removing all those trucks off the road, not only does it help with the wear and tear and it lengthens the life of our roads, it also is a big safety issue. But what we haven't really discussed is the positive impact that's going to have on our street crew as they go out to try to maintain these roads. It's a lot easier to coordinate with one vendor as opposed to all the vendors that we have in there today. So
Right, and I
they're a
know-
lot more efficient and effective in getting in to maintain these roads.
I remember years past coming out of Quail Creek up on Old Nogales Highway, the stuff, especially in multiple, trucks, the stuff was flying out and we were doing a fine or a fee, on top of that, trying to keep that to a minimum. So I could see where that'd be advantageous too.
Yeah, and not to mention the environmental impact.
Right. Yep. Diane?
Okay.
You're not on, I don't think.
The town administration fee. I don't know if it's a question for you, Shane, or for you gentlemen. Help me to understand what that pays for. Because I remember from our study session, when I first saw the RFP for your company, the fee was less. And I know for myself, I will get a sizable increase in my garbage collection because I don't have recycling and I don't do bulk waste. So my bill with my current provider is a lot less than that will be every 3 months. And my concern is for other residents that maybe don't have the wiggle room to afford more money for services that they won't necessarily want to avail themselves of.
So the contracted services, which is shown as the $18.18, so that's what would be paid to Waste Connections. So that's for all the collection services plus the customer service and the billing. The cart purchase is just for that, and then the town administration includes multiple staff that would manage the program. There were questions earlier about what would happen from a inspection or enforcement perspective, so there's staff there for that as well. So there's multiple full-time equivalents that are budgeted for those services. There's also dollars for public education and outreach and overall support for the program.
Because in my case, I'll be saving $25 a quarter on what I'm paying now.
I'll be going up a sizable amount. So that's my concern, that don't have the wiggle room. I mean, you don't have the option to not do recycling or to not do bulk waste, but you have to pay for the service
And
regardless.
John, didn't I understand that if someone is not doing recycling, wasn't that a requirement, or did I do, currently?
If I understand the question, the town is required to provide, either 2 pickups a week or 2 pickups a week.
Yes, that's
And
the
t- and
requirement.
I think the typical business model is trash and recycling, because there's a state statute that also says that the town must provide recycling opportunities. So if we did 2 garbage pickups a week, for instance, then I think the town would have to provide some sort of recycling plant or
Right.
recycling transfer station to meet that other state statute that requires us to provide recycling opportunities.
Right.
So I think that, the standard model is the green-blue can.
Right, thank you. And I know that, well, and it's always difficult, because I think one of our charges is what's, the best for all, whether it's safety, whether it's road maintenance, we have wildcat dumping, going on, currently, those types of things. So that's kind of the balance that you have to look at. Is it probably the best for the majority? Maybe it can't always be for every single person, I guess.
No, but I don't.
I think we should have the conversation on.
Yes, on
the
record.
record.
Did you want to ask a clarifying question on that, Diane?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I have
Yes.
a question. So there was a slide showing kind of average costs, current costs,
But
and
this is,
so I was just trying to figure out if those were accurate numbers. So the $34 to $61 a month.
Yeah, these were based on survey work that Burns and McDonnell completed approximately a year ago, based on what at the time our understanding was of what was being charged for services.
And that's actually with calling our residents in Sahuarita?
It was either calling them or calling the service providers
Oh, I see.
directly. So
Yep.
it was a combination of those.
Right.
And to some extent, I think town staff may have had some information, so it was just trying to get
Combination of all
that
those.
data from, multiple sources.
Dr. Gillespie, did you have a follow-up?
Oh, so my current rate and people I've talked to fall within that average there. And so if there's outliers, I'd love to hear more about them. But if it's not, then it's okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
One outlier certainly is that we do have residents in our community who don't currently contract with any vendor.
Right.
Some might argue that lends itself to the desert dumping problem, and others are very responsible about how they handle their trash. I have a neighbor down the road, great family. They just don't have a contract with a vendor. They've got a big old pickup truck that has these built walls on the side of it, and they throw it in there, and when the bed is full, they go take it, I think they take it to the transfer station. But I looked at the cost at the transfer station, and
Right.
every load, it doesn't matter.
In
If it's the
gas,
back of
and-
the trunk of your car, or if it's the back of a pickup truck, it's $25.
Right.
And then you've got your time and your gas on top of that. So, I felt that, if we could negotiate and target something well under the $25 a month, we're probably hitting a sweet spot even with people that use the transfer station.
Right. Thank you.
Mayor, also, I think there's also that environmental benefit that if you're storing trash on your property for a week or 2 weeks, it's just a natural attraction for rodents and other pests. So I think as a sort of community benefit, that is what would be one of the goals here is to because to reduce that those attractive nuisances for pests and rodents and things like that. And so because it becomes a town enforcement issue, it becomes a
Right.
neighbor complaint, and so this solves more than just the trucks on the street issue. I think there's a broader solution.
Right.
Also speaking to that environmental benefit, if we have residents that aren't currently taking advantage of recycling and they're only using waste services through vendors, that's the impact on the landfill as well. And through a model like this, providing a can to them at a reasonable price, then we're doing our part in taking care of that.
Right. Well, I know our ultimate goal early on was, the safety, road maintenance, reduced cost on what, for the majority, is here currently at a higher level of service. I don't have bulk pickup. you know, we don't have 4 or 5 events for those opportunities. So I certainly saw it as a win-win. Any more questions of our consultants and folks? No? If not, I'll oh, I'm sorry. Are you Mel? Well, why don't you come up, because I won't take those questions that I asked as your 3 minutes. So welcome and.
Well, I appreciate you asking all. I just have one.
Sure, great, thanks.
I'm the one that added to your extended stay. The only question was the third one, paying for the return of the carts to the existing vendor.
Yep.
I would appreciate if the selected vendor would be our advocate and go to Waste Management or Republic or whoever else we're dealing with and convince them that we can't afford to pay $150. That's the only one I really have a question about.
Great. Is that what your contract states? It's $150 for the pickup?
I'm pretty sure mine are 75 apiece.
Okay. Oh, I see, for each one, right?
And like Diane, she lives up the street from me.
Okay.
We live in a restricted income community, Sonora. So some of my fellow residents don't have the wherewithal to absorb that kind of money.
Right. Thank you.
Other than that, thank you very much.
Welcome back to the microphone,
Yeah,
sir.
thank you very much. Very, very valid and fair concern. What I would say and really encourage the town to leverage your guys' buying power, right? Waste Management, Republic, our competitors, frankly, rarely like to do the nice thing for us. I'd like to say we're a little bit different, right? We like to play in the sandbox when these things happen. I'd love to say we retain every single community around the country. That's not always the case. I do think we do here, though. Larry, I don't think we've lost one yet. But I would say we would absolutely reach out to Waste Management and Republic and do everything in our power to mitigate those costs or to frankly try to waive them for you. But I would really encourage the town to leverage that buying power and say, hey, wasn't your turn this year or this go around, but the contract's a 7-year contract. And if you want a shot to be competitive in 7 years, I highly recommend you work with our with our constituents and residents.
And,
So.
you know, Mel, you know, and thankfully stated as, you know, to do what we can, and I hear that from, you know, both sides. So I appreciate that willingness. Thank you.
So, Mayor, I think you were going to ask for a motion.
Yes.
At this point, we're not agendized really for a motion, just sort of consensus of council direction to proceed to negotiate the contract.
Okay. I had it down as a motion, though, to approve.
Yeah, but the agenda is just presentation discussion. It doesn't have an action item.
Because I had a suggested motion. I moved to approve the solid waste program and authorize negotiations of a contract.
Mayor,
Yes.
what we have here is, the original thought was to have a contract in front of you.
Oh, I see.
And because we don't have a contract in front of you, we want direction from you to
Gotcha.
finalize a contract with the vendor. So we need you to give us a clear direction. That's just short of taking a motion, but we need direction from the council that this is what you want to see on December 9th. You want to see a contract reflecting these things, and that'll give us, as staff, a charge to get that done and be ready for your December 9th meeting.
Got it. Thank you. Well, that would be a yes from me.
I'm okay with staff doing that.
This sounds good.
I'm good with it.
Yes. Ed? Thumbs up? Thumbs up, okay. Do you have clear direction? We do, thanks. And I always promise for the 2 new members, depending on the length, that we always take a quick break at 8 o'clock. So I'm trying to comply with that, even though we had a break earlier. But we'll take a quick 5 break since we finished that agenda item. Thank you. Just be a quick 5-minute break.
No, I was thinking
Please hold. Sorry, I forgot. I apologize, I brought the wrong set of paperwork with me. So I'm here tonight to talk to you a little bit about the current phase of the police department expansion, which was approved and funded as part of this fiscal year, is currently underway. A little bit of background as to how we got to where we are on this particular phase of the project. We're considering doing a solar installation at PD, and we've had experience with that before. So in 2020, we proposed the installation of solar at our wastewater facility. And the solar array was brought online in December of 2021, and it generates about 85% of our need for the wastewater treatment facility. And to date, it's created savings of about $150,000 in electrical for us, as well as providing necessary shade structures for the wastewater and streets equipment over at our wastewater facility. So we thought this might be a good idea to look into at PD, being as it runs 24/7. It's the only operation that we have that's 24/7. So their electric costs are typically higher than what we see at the other town hall buildings. So as part of the first phase, again, that's currently ongoing and funded this year, the staff is recommending that we install a solar array. Again, it would provide about 85% of the needs for just the PD facility. There's no initial cost to the town for this solar array, but we agree to purchase the power from the solar provider at a guaranteed rate for 28 years. There's no operations or maintenance cost to the town for the solar array for that time. So assuming that electric costs raise somewhere between 0 and 3% every year. So it could be 0 for every year for the next 28 years, or up to 3% every year for the next 28 years. We will save a minimum of $12,000 and as much as $853,000 over the course of that 28 years. And the installation of the solar array also has the added benefit, it will provide shade structures for our PD vehicles. If we were just to buy the shade structures for the new spaces, we're creating 85 new parking spaces over at PD, it would cost us about $700,000 just for shade structures that didn't have any other additional benefit.
Beth, just for clarification, I'm assuming we would like to have shade structure for those places because of the unique electronics that are in there that we would not want to replace because of the heated sun.
Correct. There's a number of reasons why we would want to have our vehicles covered. Even just from a comfort standpoint for people getting in and out of vehicles, it's the sun's awful for your paint, for your tires, all these other components, and we pay a lot of money for those PD vehicles, so we want them to last as long as possible.
Yeah. Chief, what's the average cost of a full build-out police car nowadays? Thanks.
So we don't want to just leave them sitting in the sun.
Yeah, for the record, that was $106,000 to $112,000 each car.
So the discussion about solar also went hand in hand with something else that we discovered as we started designing the PD facility, that in 2008, the National Electric Code adopted a new criteria, Article 708, which basically says that critical operations power systems, or COPS, I guess sort of punny, maybe? But they're power systems or facilities that require continuous operation for the reason of public safety, emergency management, national security, or business continuity. And Article 708 was developed in response to a number of natural disasters. And the implementation of this required a number of items that were previously like best practices or suggestions. And one of those items was that for COPS facilities, they need a backup power source with a minimum operating time of 72 hours. Now, if you remember, this building was built in 2008, so we just missed the implementation for the buildings that we're in now. But as we do the expansions in the future, especially for the building like the PD, which is a critical operating power system, we need to comply with this standard. So how do we do that? So one of the things we looked at is, in conjunction with the solar array, is doing a solar battery backup. We compared that with doing a generator. So some of the discussions for a solar battery backup, it's silent when it's operating, unlike a generator of that size that would be needed to power the PD facility. There's no need for fuel. There's fewer moving parts, so the maintenance requirements are smaller. It has a much smaller overall footprint than a generator and associated facilities, and you don't need any staff to be around when it's in operation. And the solar battery backup would be guaranteed for about 15 years. With a generator, you have to rely on fuel, which might be difficult to obtain in an emergency. In the case that we're looking at, we need a 2,000-gallon fuel tank to supply fuel for the 72 hours to guarantee that 72 hours. There's noise and odor while it's operating. You have to do regular maintenance and permitting on a generator. You need the fuel storage, which is flammable and has a very limited shelf life. And it requires staff for refueling during any kind of extended operation. A generator the size that we're looking at to run PD uses about 26 gallons per hour that it runs, which is why we would need a 2,000-gallon tank. So these are the two costs for the system. The battery backup system would cost about $623,000, and all the generators and associated components is about $510,000. Even though there's about $111,000 difference spread over the course of 28 years, as long as we're spending $4,500 in associated permitting, staff, fuel, et cetera, for the generator, it doesn't make sense for us to go with the generator. Plus, it creates additional issues for us. If we don't run the generator for 72 hours, we have 2,000 gallons of fuel that every year that we have to dispose of.
Right.
So we've created other issues for ourselves. Plus, if any of you have ever been in the parking lot at PD trying to bring a larger fueling vehicle into that area to fuel or to remove fuel, again, and there's a number of challenges. So at this point, the staff recommendation is that we move forward with the solar battery backup. None of these, so the solar battery backup isn't coming to you at this time. That would be with a future phase of the project. But we would be installing the solar with the first phase of the project, which is why we wanted to bring this to your attention now.
And I also remember from my Air Force days, with a generator, you have to exercise it pretty regularly, which is going to burn fuel. So, the 2,000 gallons is the one time you're going to have the additional fuel cost of exercising it. Probably, I think we had to do it monthly.
And that also requires staff.
Right, from that. Any questions? Diane?
Are there any municipalities that have experience with the solar battery backup?
There are, but we would actually be the first. It's interesting because I didn't feel that this was very ingenious on our part. I felt that it was one of those things that it just made sense. We will be the first municipality where the electric company allows us to separate ourselves from the grid, essentially. So I don't know if any of you remember when we did the wastewater solar installation. We still have a generator at the wastewater treatment plant for when we lose power. One, we don't have a battery backup, but even during the day, if we lost power, we have to rely on the generator, because the way it currently works is you have to basically turn the solar system off, because it will continue to pump electricity into the grid. And the electricity company wants to be able to control that, because if they have people working on the system, they need to know what's hot and what isn't. Well, in our situation, we've worked with the provider, and they are going to allow us to separate ourselves in the event of a power failure, where as long as the sun is out, we can keep generating power, or we can go to that battery backup system, overnight if the power's out for longer, and then as long as the sun comes up the next day, the batteries begin recharging themselves, and we have power, and we can run our entire PD facility. In addition to that, we do have an existing generator that runs about a third of the PD that exists today. That will also be there in case we have an extended extended outage, or, it's a monsoon and we get, a long period of clouds, that we would still have a backup to the backup. We're just gonna keep that generator in service.
This is now we're at a decision point because we're looking at, we're gonna have to do something to
Correct.
comply. So it's sort of that inflection point where you go one way or the other.
Correct. So at this point, with phase one of the PD expansion, again, that it's currently funded and currently underway, we're looking at doing the solar array installation. And with a future phase, we would do the battery backup, because we don't need the battery backup system until we start building the actual expansion.
Right,
So we wouldn't do that ahead of time.
right. Thank you. Any further questions before I go to the audience? No? Noah, did you want to address this one?
Being an early adopter usually isn't a good idea. Usually pay more and get less. But my concern is we voted for $7.5 million for the PD, and we voted it down strongly. But it feels like the town council is damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. We don't care what people say. I don't know why we're so worried about changing things, being on new regulations for things the town didn't ask for. They actually pretty strongly said we're not interested in this. And as far as the other things, is you should always ask for variance. Always ask for variance for for a cost that you think is burdensome before you throw out $500,000 to maybe an unneeded solution. But the big problem is we voted this down. We don't want the PD expanded. We said no. But it feels like we're just doing it anyway, because that's what you guys care about, the people that you represent.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address the council? Seeing no movement. Any further questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Actually, Mayor and Council, Beth, could you come back up just for a second, please? So I know that, again, this one's listed for formal action, but really, Beth, is there an opportunity to parse this out in the form of a contract for action before council?
There will be.
So-
A contract will come back to mayor and council for the contract with Solon, who's the solar provider. And then at another time in the future, it'll come back for a second contract with Solon for the battery system.
So this was really like the previous one.
Like the previous
kind
one.
of the comfort level of.
We want to make sure that the council is comfortable with us negotiating this contract to bring it in front of you. We didn't
Right.
want to assume that this is the direction you guys wanted to go.
Right.
So, again, just kind of a thumbs up, yeah, that you want us to prepare a contract to do just what Beth is proposing tonight, and we'll bring it back in front of you
Right.
guys.
Well, I mean, kind of my take is we have to do something to be in compliance, and it's whether we want to go with one or the other. And I'm comfortable personally with the recommendation that's come from staff. So I would want input from others, or staff needs input from others. I don't.
I'm okay with this. I also wanted to just clarify to the public, in spite of the criticism that was given to us, this is a project that has already been paid for. Like, we've already budgeted. This is not part of this expansion for the solar array has nothing to do with the bond that was failed. This has to do with, we are out of space, and this has already been set aside to expand on the town.
The PD project itself was, even before we even had a thought of a bond in our minds, was on the table in our capital programming. And we decided to break that into phases in more manageable bites, because it is a sizable investment in the community. And so this phase has already been programmed in the budget for capital. And that was way before we even talked about a bond.
So it's very limited to what we want to use as a backup system.
Yep. So
Specifically.
I'm in favor of it.
to
I
the-
just wanted to clarify that.
Yep, thank you for doing that. Everybody okay on my right? On left? I think you have direction. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Beth. Madam Clerk, item number 12, please.
Discussion and possible adoption of resolution number 2024-0812, declaring and adopting the results of the Town of Sahuarita special bond and franchise election held in conjunction with the general election on November 5th, 2024.
Thank you. John, did you want to just touch on this a little bit? Because,
Yeah, Mayor. So there was a little bit of confusion because the county hasn't canvassed the county election or the county results, and I think that's planned for Thursday.
Right.
However, there's no anticipation that the numbers are going to change in the Sahuarita elections, so we can go ahead and approve the canvass of the election tonight, and it's done.
super.
Just so we know that it's a very strange thing. It's a question of whether the town actually has to approve a canvass. I mean, everybody does it just because everybody does it, but the statute really requires that the county elections can't do the canvass. But I would say go ahead and approve the canvass, and just to finalize the results.
Right. So I would entertain a motion to approve the canvas. Oh, sorry.
Honorable Mayor, Council, if you'd like, I'm happy to summarize the results of the
I
election.
would love you to summarize the results
For the
of
record.
it. That's why you're the
So-
town clerk. And the awesome town clerk that you are. Thank you.
Proposition 403, which related to the issuance of general obligation bonds, was not approved by the voters. However, all four of the utility franchises, Props 404, 405, 406, and 407, were approved by the voters. And that's really a summary. On the plus side, the average, voter turnout was 78% overall for the county. We fared a little better with 81.87% of our voters turning out.
Mm-hmm. That's Quail Creek. So you heard the summary. I would entertain a motion to approve the canvass as stated by our town clerk.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any more questions? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Madam Clerk, item number 13, please.
Presentation and discussion and approval of the 2025 Town Council meeting schedule.
Thank you.
That's me again, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, I
if
was
may.
thinking it was.
So before you this evening is the proposed council meeting schedule for 2025. It includes council retreats in February and April and scheduled meeting dates, much like previous years, including a summer break in July. You can let me know if the schedule is approved as is, or if you have any alternative meeting dates. I'm happy to entertain those as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, the January one, I will be visiting my daughter in Okinawa, so I will miss it. Not that we need to. Oh, when I looked it up, I had the 13th. Oh, well, thank you. I rescind my question. I will be here for the January one. Diane?
I propose that we consider adding on additional meetings, especially in June when we have to do budget, to avoid those meetings that were ungodly long. And also meetings like tonight, we still have several agenda items to go. I personally would rather have an additional shorter meeting than a marathon meeting. So I'll hold that up to you, especially in June when it's budget time. If anybody else has feelings about that.
Right. And that's, it's the will of the majority of us, if we, rather have longer, fewer meetings or more, shorter meetings, I guess.
Mayor, just, this is, if this is approved tonight, it doesn't restrict the council from having additional meetings if there are really long agendas to break them up. But what this does is it helps, because we can post it on the website, and that sets the meetings, the regular meetings. Although Lisa and I have had discussions, we don't need to call it regular special, it's just a meeting.
Right.
But this sets the regular meetings for the year, but if there are agenda items, or if there are agendas that are just sort of monstrous, doesn't preclude the council from breaking it into 2 meetings that month.
Well,
Or having
No,
umpteen study sessions on budget, those kinds of
And I
things.
know working with the vice mayor and Shane, everybody is very cognizant of trying to balance where we can. I mean, there's time-sensitive things sometimes to try to, balance and move things around. I know Shane spends a lot of time on doing that. But right now, we have the proposal as it stands. To John's point, we can add meetings if we so choose to, but it's up to everybody.
I'm very good with this.
Okay, feeling a majority
We have to adopt it.
is good with it. So I guess I would entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move to approve the 2025 Town Council meeting schedule.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? One nay. Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate it. Moving on to our study session. The purpose of the study session is to discuss and address issues requiring in-depth consideration by the town council. The sessions are for staff and the council to exchange information and ideas because the public comment is really heard, and the council is not expected to act on these items. However, the council may give direction, as we've done a couple times earlier today, to staff to come to a consensus. Madam Clerk, item number 14, please.
Presentation and discussion of alternative venues and entertainment options for the annual Sarita Stars and Stripes event.
Thank you. And Devin has a return visit.
Mayor Murphy, members of the council, thanks for having me again.
Thank you for being
So
here.
tonight we wanted to talk about Sarita Stars and Stripes, bring everybody up to speed on the investigations that Parks and Recreation has been having on our event, both the venue and the performance. And we wanted to open up the floor for discussion on what we found and really get some direction moving forward for the 2025 event. So as kind of a summary, our Sarita Stars and Stripes 2024 welcomed over 18,000 attendees to Animax Park, but the fireworks viewing distance was not ideal for those in attendance. As you remember, we shot those fireworks from Man in the Maze, and we'll have that distance here in a minute, but it was about 1.7 miles away. So after that event, we heard lots of feedback, and we went to the drawing board to look at what our solutions were going to be for this next year. And we had a few follow-up objectives. First, we wanted to confirm the Stars and Stripes event location. We wanted to investigate alternative launch locations. We wanted to investigate potential alternative productions. And we wanted to commit to that 2025 event location and production. So the Stars and Stripes event location. So in 2024, it was the first year that we moved to Animax Park. Previous to 2024, we held that event both at the Town Hall complex, and I believe at a certain point, it was actually at the lake.
Yep.
So similar challenges. Some of the things that worked well for us having the event at Animax, it was a better location for programming to offer features like carnival rides, etc. And this upcoming year, we're hopeful that we'll have our splash pad completed, so that'll be an added amenity. We have significant increased vendor capacity at 250 vendor spaces. There's more space for increased attendance, which at our signature events seems to continue to go up. And then there's better heat safety with turf at Animax Rec Center. When we look at Town Hall, kind of the flip side, there's less space for programming features. We have 3 parking lots really that we work with, to the east and west of the municipal court, and then to the west of the main complex here. There's so there's a smaller space for attendance, really kind of being in the streets and the byways of Sarita Center Way. And one of the things that we've been experiencing, and it really just depends on the day, is that increased risk for heat-related issues with asphalt. In 2023, I think we got lucky. We had a bit of a rain event before the kickoff to Stars and Stripes, kept the temperature in that 85 to 90. Last year, we, I think, peaked at about 104. And when we mix heat with asphalt, that's where we have a lot of kind of the scary with the public attending. So that's the venue. Looking at alternative shooting locations for the fireworks production, because we're talking about 2 things, the event location and the production of fireworks. This last year, Man in the Maze Park was the closest safe launch location that we could identify for the fireworks. However, there are potential launch locations on private properties that we've identified over the last 6 months. Before we share those and discuss those potential sites, some things to consider, because planning a fireworks production takes a lot. There's a fallout requirement. For the shells that we launched, 12, up to 12 inch this last year, we launched to 16. We cannot see occupied buildings within 1,680 feet diameter of that launch location. There's also a fire requirement, and we work with our partner in Santa Rita Fire District to do a full visit of the site to make sure that we're mitigating that risk, and they help us support the event that night. But they need to have access to all the areas of the property for quick response and minimal fire risk. When we had this up here at Man in the Maze, they actually went behind the church. Our staff worked in tandem with Santa Rita Fire to do a 12-foot fire break behind the building as kind of one of those precautions. We also worked with private property owners for access approval. We actually created some access to the property surrounding Man in the Maze. There's also insurance requirements. Private property owners generally require $10 million in liability coverage. What we are typically able to get is about $5 million from AMRRP, but it comes down to the fireworks provider to get the additional, and sometimes that can be a challenge.
I will also add on the insurance that we're hearing from AMRRP a trending that is unfortunately making it more and more difficult to even get that kind of liability coverage. It's just one of those things in our environment today that the risk is starting to outweigh the benefit according to the insurance providers. So
That's correct.
We're looking at all of it in terms of what is the best long-term solution for our community in terms of this event. Thank you, Devin.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Dilly.
Yes, yeah, Devin?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, you got to.
Have you looked at drone?
You sound a lot like our Mayor Murphy reading ahead into the presentation.
I didn't
let's-
share notes with her.
Yeah, let's table that for a minute because I think you're onto something with it.
Right. And Devin, just for the audience, this is a study session, so
Yeah.
it's not agendized. I know Noah put in a question about choosing the lake. I know I've been here when we've had it at the lake.
Yeah.
If you want to touch on, we had to shut down Rancho Cerrito Boulevard.
Yeah, so when we look at the event locations, when we do these plannings, there's a significant lift from the town of Sarita team, as well as now Santa Rita Fire District, in helping us manage safety. That's the biggest thing that we look at when we're putting together any of these programs. The lake becomes a challenge for us for a couple of reasons. One, access around the property can be difficult, so if we had an emergency that required, let's say the east side of the lake, getting a vehicle up there for response can be challenging. But also when we add in, potentially 18,000 people to that venue, it really isn't sized for that kind of an event. Second to that, we do a pretty hefty traffic control plan as we go into this event planning. RSB really would create challenges, and I think ultimately to the neighborhoods, especially with the lead up to the event and then shut down with trying to funnel people out. We don't want people upset, and I think what we would see is just a long time to get out of the venue. So access in and out.
And that was my memory when we did hold it over there when we were much smaller. It was wall to wall, including spilling into the streets, and then you didn't have, access.
That logistics is challenging.
Right.
So,
Thanks for
and
addressing
that's
that.
the reason why we've kind of moved it to town hall, and now looking at a bigger venue. That's why we've
And
gone to
outgrowing
NMX.
that, yeah. I mean, which is good because more people are coming, but when you have more people coming, you need the safety, the parking, the traffic flow, all of those things
That's
enter
correct.
into it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So looking at some sites, so Animax is where we had the event this last year. Shot location is what we're talking about now. We held the shooting location at Man in the Maze Park. That was located 1.7 miles away from Animax Park. What we've learned in the last 6 months is ideally, if we are going to stick with fireworks, we're looking for a launch location that would be within about a mile of Animax Park. So that was the kind of start for our team to start investigating potential alternative shot locations. And there was really 4 that rose to the top. The tailings with FMI is about 1.01 miles away. However, when we think about those 3 things, we had several meetings with FMI. They actually brought out the U.S. Forest Service to do an investigation on the fire hazards. We haven't gotten that official report yet, but it's unlikely it's going to be a solution for us because of the potential for fire risk. But
Devin,
Go
for the
ahead.
public, FMI is?
sorry, Freeport McMoran.
Thank you.
Yep, so our partners at the mine. And I got to tell you, they were incredibly supportive. Matt over there with FMI called us immediately after July 4th and said, we want to talk. And we really were trying to get it to the finish line with FMI, but due to the fire risk, I don't know that that's going to be a solution for us up on the tailings. We then looked at our property, which is a little bit flatter at Twin Buttes Trails Park. It's just a hair further away, a little bit lower in elevation. But again, unlikely because of the fire risk. When we talk about what our partners at the fire district do, going down into the property and doing clear outs, it likely won't be realistic for us to take on that kind of operation at that property. We looked at Region 9 at Rancho Saurita. It's private property, which we have 2 years ago. We shot out of with our partners at Rancho before we took ownership of Man in the Maze. The challenge there, and it's closer, 0.4 miles just across the interstate. The problem there is it's likely a short-term fix for us as the future development continues down south.
Right.
So that one with buildings. And then any other event location further, it will likely be further than 1 mile away. It could be feasible if we look at the event location moving, but then we're back to the challenge of logistics, planning an event with 18,000 people. So these are our best options and potential for solutions to have an alternative launch location. So we started looking at potential alternative programming for the event. And Councilmember Lisk was spot on. One of the things we're looking at is the drone show. So we've had a few now in Parks and Recreation. We've had our first one. We actually had the first drone show in Southern Arizona at Fiesta 2023. And we've had a few successful events hosting the drones since at Winterfest and this last year's Fiesta Saurita. There's several benefits to hosting the drone show. It can be launched from a multitude of locations, very small footprint to get them up in the air. The fire danger is minimized. I mean, there's essentially no fire risk. There's minimal insurance requirements on our side to be able to host them. There's recent advancements in drones that could allow for attached pyrotechnics, and we're going to show a little bit of an example, and our provider will have that available before July 4th this next year. And drone shows have been highly favorable with the community through our event surveying. So every event we host these, we do a big survey. The drone shows actually track very high as far as satisfaction goes for our event attendees. So the bottom picture here is from Fiesta this last year. You can maybe recognize that logo. And on top, we wanted to pull a little video teaser of what this really could be. So I think I can ask Lisa to play it. And I apologize, I don't think there's sound with this. So really what we're trying to demonstrate here is what we could do with these drones now. So adding the layer of pyrotechnics to the drones. We've also talked about having some smaller show pyrotechnics at Animax Park for those in attendance in addition to this. But we think it's very feasible for us to move down this path as an event alternative to fireworks for the community. And another benefit for us is it actually has a bit longer viewing range than fireworks for us, about an 8-mile distance around, and there's not, a bang to them. There really is just a visual continuously.
And I know over the years, the dog lovers, animals, that's always been a concern. And then the veterans with, PTSD and those types of things that I have been asked about kind of on a continual basis. The noise, the pulsating on it, just two other things I would say to consider.
Yeah, and they're becoming more and more popular. I think for us, it's worthwhile attempting a fireworks show for July 4th with this added feature of pyrotechnics. And the servicer we use, and several that we've talked to that have already put into play the pyrotechnic features, have had nothing but good things to say from the communities.
Right.
So we're highly interested in this alternative.
And especially when we've done the drone shows in conjunction with the music, and I know we've spread the sound system, throughout the various locations. So when you coordinate, that with it, I think that goes a long way as well.
Devin, do they have these shows, these drone shows with pyrotechnics that are coordinated with music? So it's actually a show
Yeah, Shane, they do, and that's something we're investigating as well. So we would look at that kind of total package, the drone show with pyrotechnics and the music.
Yeah.
One thing that we've talked about is our partner in KGVY to see if we could do that broadcasted. But we would really try to, put our eggs in this basket and make sure that the community really felt the impact with this programming.
Yeah, because you could have the sound, on site where you'd hear it, but also coordinating potentially with KGVY. So if you're in a car or if you're driving in the distance and you've tuned into it, kind of like the new drive-in movie theater.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Devin, from a cost standpoint, what are we looking at if we look, we're in the mode of trying to figure out a permanent solution, running into these very legitimate obstacles in terms of the continuation of the traditional fireworks display. What are we talking about in terms of budget comparison, if we were to make this transition and try this out this year and see how it goes?
Yeah, Shane, to answer that question, historically, depending on the type of show we go for, we're talking on fireworks, talking in the neighborhood of 50 to 60,000 to program that event. When we look at a drone show as a solution, a good example, Fiesta Saurita didn't have the pyrotechnic features. We paid about 25,000 for that show. So savings, yeah, we would likely see an impact of savings for us to go this route over the
Or
fireworks.
if we're going to transition to it, knowing the community is going to continue to grow,
Yeah.
we're not going to have fire or, liability insurance isn't going to get cheaper,
Yeah.
maybe, to go grander and bigger, right? The coordination of the music, the pyrotechnics on the drones, it gives us some capacity
Yeah.
to, I think, take it to another level.
Yeah, and Mayor Murphy, there's kind of the, I guess the best way to put it is the cost that we don't track, dollar for dollar with programming a fireworks show. The staff hours to go out and help mitigate the risk on the property, the multiple meetings with our partners at Santa Rita Fire District to make sure that they feel safe and comfortable.
Not to mention their time.
Their time.
Yeah.
Right.
Same thing with, community development that assists us through the permitting. Leading up to this last July 4th, I think we had 5 meetings, just talking safety before
Right.
everybody felt comfortable, given the okay with that show. So there is that, almost untracked expense with the staff hours and the partners' staff hours in helping support this show.
Right. Did you have a comment? Yes.
The benefits of doing a drone over fireworks, because I used to do that in my other community, so I know that the safety issue, it's also the huge cleanup. People forget about the cleanup of all of that stuff that gets left. I mean, it's in where you're shooting these off, unless you're shooting them off on cement, which you're not. The cleanup for those shells and where they splatter, I mean, the pyrotechs, I know, have a very good control of where everything is. But when you have an option and where the drones are going, I think, and especially with insurance, everything that goes along with it, and the safety and the animal situation, it's getting worse and worse.
Right.
And I think that's the reason why it's reflecting in the insurance and how much that's costing, because they don't want you to do it.
Right.
And then to hear the difference in the cost, I mean, safety in itself is like the number one piece, and with fire.
Yeah, and that's typically the biggest lift leading up to the event is the safety.
And we're Arizona, and we're dry Arizona
Yeah.
on it, so it doesn't. I went to one at Vail a few years ago from the golf course, and it set the golf course literally, not a huge, but it set it on fire.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. I come from Washington State, where it rains all the time, right? And everyone says it rains on the 4th of July, which it doesn't. But I had to cancel the day before, 2 days before the 4th of July, because we were so hot the end of June going into the 4th of July, that talk about pissing off a bunch of, residents that were expecting a fireworks display, but because the fire department
Yeah.
called it, it was just too hot.
Yeah.
The ground wasn't.
And that's a great point, Councilmember Lisk. Leading up to this event, there was kind of 2 situations that would have pulled the plug for us. One being a wind event with sustained winds over, I believe, 20 miles per hour. And then the second, which was a fear leading into it, was the fire risk with us being dry. Thankfully, and I got to give kudos to Chief Wonder. They let us roll, and they mitigated the risk and had crews there on the ground. But those were the two kind of no-goes for us, which don't exist with drone shows.
And back to the sunk cost, we don't track all of the extra effort on the fire district.
Yeah.
To have to go out and provide the service.
I have two questions, and one I didn't have until just now. Drones can go up in significant winds?
They can, yes. So I'll have to circle back with you. I'm
Yeah.
shooting from the hip on this, but I believe that our servicer told us that the drones can fly up to 35 or 40 miles an hour winds.
They've come a long ways,
Yeah.
Yeah.
for stability.
You mean better than
and
my
stuff.
little kid ones?
Right.
Then the one that my original question, I think, so I know that we can still do fireworks. We're planning on still doing them in December off our building.
Yes.
Is that something that you were considering? I feel like kind of like weaning our residents off fireworks. I know you said something on the
Yeah.
ground, but something that's a little bit high, but not like the massive ones, just so
Yeah.
we can start to wean if we need to over time,
Yeah.
and have less of these because of what we've stated before.
Yeah, Vice Mayor Egbert, to answer your question, and maybe a better answer too, is we have a really good relationship with our fireworks producer in Randy Raymond and Raymond Pyrotechnics. If we went down this road, we'd still have to partner with them to provide the pyrotechnics to be mounted to the drone, so we'd still maintain that relationship. And because they'd be down here, there is some cost effectiveness for us to do what you're talking about, which is the stage production. So not the mortars that go up in the air and, require pretty significant oversight with Santa Rita Fire and the approval process and the insurance. The stage pyrotechnics are the ones that are more impactful if you're at the event, and that's something we've absolutely talked about trying to program at Animax if we do this next July 4th.
Thank you.
And if we had some capacity, to do fireworks longer, it would probably be, much more expensive. What's the differential if it's a 20-minute or 15-minute drone show as opposed to a 20? There's probably some battery capacity.
Yeah.
They probably can only go so long. But if we have that extra money capacity, again, whether we do some pyrotechnics or, extend the length of it, because most of the people I know never got tired of watching the thing, with the sponsors, it's just amazing what they can do with those things.
Yeah, Mayor Murphy, great question. So if you remember back to Fiesta, which was our last drone show, we had 150 drones, if I remember correctly. What we're talking about for July 4th is 250. So it would be a bigger show within, still a pretty significant savings on the fireworks production alone. Part of the reason why we're looking at the 250 and talking, we had a preliminary discussion with our provider, is that it's about they've improved, but it's about a 20-minute timer for those drones in the air before the batteries die. So with the increase at the 250,
You can
the
make that
idea
out.
is, they'll be able to extend it. So they'll kind of send a wave off, 175, and then start the show, and then as they're going, another wave will go up. So that we can really kind of kick out that 20 minutes to 25, 30 minutes, which is closer to what we saw with our firework production.
Right. I've only heard nothing but positive feedback. If there is a possibility to add pyrotechnics, and I think the coordination of, patriotic music, in association with it, because part of fireworks, is the boom factor, right, is the sound factor. If that can be replicated, with music, in coordination of it, I think that would add to the intensity of it.
Yeah.
Debbie?
I think the key thing is to let the public know we're not having fireworks. Right, big fireworks,
Yeah.
because they were very upset last year. They were not happy with the drones. I think bigger and better would be okay, but they just were not happy with the fact that they couldn't see fireworks.
Or hear it.
And right, so I think communicating with the
Yeah.
public, with the community, and letting them know ahead of time there's not gonna be fireworks anywhere, might be a better solution for everybody.
Yeah, and that'll be our game plan. That's why we have the item in front of you, 6.5 months, 7 months ahead, is we've got some homework to do, notifying the public, getting this all programmed for an event. But we realize that it's going to be kind of a public notice process as well to let them know what we're planning. So.
Any concerns, questions? Okay with the direction we're going? Yep. Am I right? Yep. Thanks, Devin.
Yeah, I think that was my last slide. Sorry, I'm stuck on the video. Yeah, all right. So this is what we were going to ask you, is to confirm the Stars and Stripe event location and commit to a production. So I appreciate your feedback, and yeah, if there's any other questions, we'll keep you updated. But thank you for your input and discussion tonight.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next, Madam Clerk, item number 15.
Discussion regarding
since the last break.
the current and proposed 20-year regional transportation plan coordinated by the Regional Transportation Authority, RTA.
Thank you, and Beth Abramovitz will lead it. Shane and I have been deeply involved with it since the beginning. It's the bane of my existence of that particular meeting. Years ago, when we had RTA 1, those meetings lasted about an hour on carrying it out, and now they're up to 5 and 6 hours.
I
So-
cleared my afternoon schedule.
Yes,
for that-
thank you.
for that
And,
day.
and we've had to almost clear into the evening on a
Yeah,
couple of
yeah.
occasions.
They should be providing lunch and dinner.
Absolutely, but, you know, we're at that public input policy, feedback policy, timeframe right now, because the sort of no-go-go is, it's potentially on the November 25 election, and we have to, isn't it May, Beth, that we have to have, RTA council has to vote to get it on the ballot for November? It's something in the May
I
timeframe.
believe you're correct.
Yeah, on there. So I asked Beth to lead the discussion, and then Shane and I can, you know, weigh in from my perspective on how I think it's going or not going, so.
Well, good evening again, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. And I want to apologize that I put 4 pages of boring text in your packets. I'm not going to read to you again everything that I put in your packet, but again, I apologize for the lack of any kind of photos or anything exciting with all that text. I did also leave for you a map, as the mayor alluded to. RTA is currently starting their public process on this, and this is one of the components that they're sharing, so we'll talk about this a little bit, but I just wanted you to know this was part of our discussion. And I believe in your packet was also a copy of the plan that is out to the public for discussion. The very simple wrap-up of all of this is that the RTA Next planning began in about 2018. So we're a good 6 years into this planning process. It began with a Citizens Advisory Committee and then went to the Technical Management Committee, which is made up primarily of the town and city managers, and then on to the RTA board. And there's been a lot of back and forth over those last 6 years just to get to where we are. And again, I tried to cover I'll call it the most important points, boiling down those last 6 years into, 4 pages for you. Where we are right now is, I've outlined for you in that presentation, or in those pages, what is in that RTA Next plan. So it's a $2.46 billion anticipated budget for the plan. The 2.48 is what was approved by the RTA board, and that is the half-cent sales tax that we currently have now. It sunsets in 2006. The
26.
I'm sorry, 2026.
Started in 2006.
It's late, I'm sorry. In 2026. And this will be a continuation of that half-cent sales tax and what we would do with that. The Eller College has done a number of projections, and that 2.46 is the pessimistic baseline, just so that we all understand. We did not perform to the levels that we expected with the first RTA, which is why they used the pessimistic baseline. But you also have to consider that we had an unprecedented recession and a pandemic during that time, which impacted the collections. So, which is why they went with that pessimistic projection. And you'll see that there's some discussion as well that's been going on as to what happens if we collect over that pessimistic amount and where those funds would go. Again, without reading everything to you, I don't know, if Shane, Mr. Mayor, if you wanted to jump in with any key points about, anything that has been going on that
So, yeah, this
Yeah.
is really a tag team. I wanted to just explain a little bit more about what we hope to accomplish tonight in this conversation. One is to make sure that you are aware that PAG is in the throes of reaching out to our public and presenting this plan to them for feedback. Two is by virtue of this, hopefully we're getting a little more public attention on the fact that PAG is in the process of going out to the public with this plan and how important it is for the public to be engaged and to try to, be at the table and share their thoughts. Because if our voices here aren't being heard and collected, then the only voices that are going to be heard and collected are further north. And it's really important that our Green Valley residents, as well as Sahuarita residents, really weigh in on what's important to us here in the southern region of the county. And then finally, as the mayor and I are deeply engaged in this process at the regional council level and the management level, it's really important that we know we can speak with confidence when we're in front of our regional partners having these discussions. And most importantly, because it's sitting right now with the mayor and the regional council, the mayor needs to know that, that he is speaking on behalf of a council who's informed and have provided their voices on where we're at and how comfortable you guys are in the event that certain things happen. And we can talk about what those certain things are. But it really is because we hear other mayors saying, hey, and our council has said this, and it's just really important, I think, at this point, now that the public is now getting engaged and informed, that the mayor has that ability to hear from you and knows how we can move forward.
Yeah, and part of it is the fact that, I'll be frank, the city, wants a certain percentage, right? There's money that their citizens collect from their citizens up there, plus our citizens also shop up there, right? So part of my struggle is that it's been less of a regional plan, and I would say cooperation, and more parochial, that they're to a point where if we don't get X, Y, Z, then we'll walk, the city. And there doesn't seem, in my opinion, to be enough concern about the outlying areas which actually carried it in 2006, to approval. And, out of the $2.46 billion already now, about 2 to 3% of our Pima County residents use transit, mass transit, and about $600 million of this plan is dedicated to that, to include not any expansion of it. It's just the continuation of what they have right now. So when I think of our residents in Green Valley and those areas, over the next 20 years, there's nothing allocated for that. There's a allocation, the city wanted $70 million to try to get a match for a bus rapid transit system for one route from downtown up Stone to the Tucson Mall, which would actually take 2 lanes out of Stone Avenue. So a few of us are more concerned about what is in this plan that can actually help people get from point A to point B quicker and easier, and not necessarily thinking everybody from down here is going to get on a bike and a bus to get to their next destination, especially in July. So, what Shane was touching on is just kind of having an idea, and please, weigh in either through the survey or, through me on what eventually we'll have the feedback session. The regional council will have to take a vote on what plan is acceptable that we want to send to the voters. And obviously, it's a 20-year plan. Part of my other concern is there's about 11 projects that the city hasn't started, and what we've been dealing with is you have your PAG, Pima Association of Governments money, then you have your RTA money. So they're looking at wanting to continually sweep the PAG money that is for the benefit of all of us, all our jurisdictions, to help complete some of these projects, and what would be the comfort level of sweeping these things for, 5, 7, 12 years. And there's some policies also that I think will be really important. There was 2 approved projects by the citizens that they ended up, because of change in transportation habits, didn't actually complete to that, going from 4 lanes to 6 lanes. They're staying in 4 lanes. I voted against that because, the voters said they wanted 6 lanes, and I've always been taught, a voter initiative takes the day, right? If you say you're gonna build something, that's what you're gonna build at the end of the day. So this was just an opportunity, again, to Shane's point, that we're going back to the community to see what the appetite is, for it. We were originally gonna be looking at doing it in May, but the city did a half-cent sales tax for residential road renovation, and now they're gonna go back for a potential another half-cent in March. And I thought having it come to the citizens in May was way too close together, so we did get it moved to November. But, I want us all treated fairly, and I did agree to have it go out to the voters for feedback. I was consistent with that, but it's important to, listen to the citizens and then see what the appetite is, because eventually I'm gonna come back to all of us, you, and say, okay, this is the plan. Do you want me to go up there and support it? 'Cause-
Mayor, just to support what you're saying, I think the mayor very strategically supported this plan going out, not because he said, hey, this is the best plan we could put out there, but we have to answer RTA now before we can have any success in even with an RTA Next program. And so, he wanted to get the public process going on the RTA Next plan and provide time in the interim to have a conversation as a regional council about how to solve RTA now, this RTA with all these outstanding projects that the city hasn't been able to deliver on. And what does that look like in terms of a solution? Because it just keeps bleeding over and over into the RTA Next and just compounding. In addition to that, the plan that's going out in front of the public, as a team representing the town at this point, we have felt like there needs to be some pretty strict administrative policies with this plan in order for it to be successful, i.e., the city is insisting on having a certain allocation of funds beyond what the pessimistic, no, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, beyond the pessimistic model. And we're concerned about us seeing that day and the city not changing its ability to deliver on projects. And so we're getting backed up on projects again, and they're tying up all this money without the ability for any of the other regional entities to be able to benefit. So if we have projects that are ready to go and they're not able to deliver on their projects, we want to be able to say, hey, you have your chance, it's yours to lose, but if you lose it, we're going to jump in and be able to use it for the benefit of
Because
the
when they
region.
do the 20-year plan, they program when these things are supposed to happen, and in a lot of cases, they're not happening within the quadrant, and then they just keep rolling and tying up the money as they move forward. So those are the types of policies that, we'd be looking at. So,
And if that kind of direction resonates well, with the council, then it would be good for you to communicate that to us as we continue to move forward, as the mayor continues to move forward in representing these discussions at the regional council level and me at the management committee level.
Okay, so I'm gonna make sure, I'm gonna try to capture what you would like. Regarding the stricter maybe, or any policy, admin policies, you wanting direction on that if the council would agree. That's the first one I've just caught, that you would want us to give permission to the mayor to push back and say, yes, these need to be more clearly identified.
Before
what
we
to do
can
with these-
support this kind of plan,
Yes, that
these
needs to be.
policies have to be established and agreed upon.
Fully agree with that. And you can push back from my standpoint, fully, that to me is just more, it's a regional project. It's a regional view instead of these other things. So I'm in full support of that. I don't know if anybody else wants to weigh in on that too, before we go to the next. So I think there's a couple more things.
Yeah,
There is.
yeah. Everybody okay? You know what I? Yep. Yes. Mic on?
Mic on?
You failed on the first night, I tell you what.
I know, that's just the way it is with me. I'm looking at this roadway planning study area versus in the roadway corridor project. It's coming down through La Vita, out to the highway. What is it for? What do we gain by it? What does anyone gain by that?
Yep, and those are, the projects are submitted from each of the municipalities. And Beth, do you want to touch on how we ended up on our couple of projects for the town?
Sure, absolutely. So again, we have to go back into the Wayback Machine a little bit because this effort did start in about 2018. And at that time, we actually did do a citizen survey, and we asked the citizens if the RTA was to continue, what type of project they'd be interested in. To your question about the La Vita corridor, that it would run from Sarita Road and connect essentially to Nogales Highway. Right now, La
Down by the
Vita.
Walmart, right? By Walmart.
He's talking about the roadway planning study area.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
the
the dotted
Sonoran
line to
corridor.
Rita Road, yes.
The dotted line is the Sonoran corridor that you've probably heard people mention.
And that's some money to, I think it's to start the EIS two.
No, there is funding right now for the second phase of the EIS. This would be to, for the municipalities that it impacts to update their major streets and routes plans so that as development comes into those undeveloped areas, those developers would be setting aside that right-of-way so that we wouldn't have to purchase that right-of-way in the future. And it would also make it possible, because we would know where that right-of-way is, for jurisdictions to purchase, make advanced right-of-way purchases if they were necessary.
And that's that future corridor from I-19 east up and then hitting I-10 around the Vale area, which is going to, take many, many, many years. But this is just the first piece of that to get it to the second EIS planning stage.
Okay.
Don't worry, you'll catch up. And-
Yeah,
and
that-
you-
it-
and
that-
you may
the
wanna
Sonoran
just
corridor
sit
in
down with
itself
Beth.
is-
Yeah, you'll want to sit down with Beth and get caught up on it. Don't
They
stress
call
about
the
that.
Sonoran Corridor a generational project. It's likely that I probably won't ever see it.
Right.
But if you don't plan for it today, it's likely never going to happen. And so that's what this kind of project is.
Your grandson may not see that project at the end of the day. Just putting that out there. Our two major, there's these different buckets of money in RTA Next, like there was in the first. There's the name roadway projects, like Sahuarita Road was the major improvement for us and RTA one. Then there's environmental, there's wildlife crossings, there's bike and ped, there's all these, different buckets, transit, a big one, in there. And it's that balancing act of how big the bucket should be, who gets them, all those types of things. That's, to get to the 2.46, billion dollars. That's kind of what we're ending up wrestling with. But if you look at the map, from my perspective, and you see the red lines, and those are your major roadway improvements, you can notice a lot of those are in the core of the city as opposed to the outlying areas, especially the unincorporated areas. You'll notice not a lot of red working out of there. And part of what I've tried to put on the table is, the fixed routes that basically have no ridership to a large degree. And as you know, the last few years they've been free, which actually has decreased ridership because of the safety issues on a lot of those buses. and there's not a lot of money, there was no money, for, looking at maybe microtransit, that kind of the new way of delivering, almost like a sort of a, lack of a better term, government Uber, where you can be a little bit more flexible based on the traffic flow as opposed to the old way. You just have a fixed route. You don't care if anybody, is riding it or not. You just keep on plugging away. So it's that kind of flexibility I think we should be building in, from a capacity standpoint, but I'm just one vote.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to just make it clear to everybody, if you're looking at this map, the items that are represented here are just the roadway elements that are part of the plan. So this is only the $1.1 billion. This isn't the whole $2.46 billion plan that you're seeing here. As the mayor alluded to, there's a number of other buckets, and the formal term for those in RTA next speak is categoricals. So you hear that term tossed around a lot. So the remainder of the RTA is made up primarily of the categorical elements. So in addition to the 2 roadway projects that the town of Sahuarita has, that we would get a percentage or a portion of those categorical buckets, wildlife crossings, the safety and active transportation, the environmental. In the past, we have actually benefited from, in the current RTA, some of those projects, the turn lanes, for example, that were added late to Rancho Sahuarita Boulevard. I want to say it was like 2018-ish when those were added. Those were actually completed using RTA funds from the safety and active transportation element. So we do get additional funds outside of just those 2 large projects.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I guess I have a question for staff, probably. You may know too. There is a potential that we would, as a council and mayor, not support this. Like, there's a potential for that based
Yes.
on what they're proposing, because I am not a fan of did you say 600 million?
600 million.
For mass transit, but they're not building anything, they're just paying for people to ride, like. it's
There is
just
some
free rides.
expansion in that.
Oh, a little bit.
A
but-
little bit.
Little bit.
But most of it is to
Mo-
offset free rides,
Most of it is to carry on as it's doing today.
Yes.
which is free rides.
Well, no, I
Right.
think that
Mostly,
there's some on the city council that would like to continue the free ride. That is not within the plan, but there's very little expansion as driving habits change and things to add, especially in the outlying areas.
And we do know that there is some sensitivity by some of our other regional partners, like Oro Valley. They're watching this one pretty carefully because the transit system does operate and serve a good portion of their community. And so it's difficult for them because they're kind of guilty by association because it's the city of Tucson that's operating, but it does impact their residency.
Right,
So
and I think what you might, go ahead, Beth, before.
What I'd like to offer is, we have asked the city of Tucson whether or not they would continue the free ridership. And to the mayor's point, they would like to. They've been kind of very wishy-washy as to whether that would really happen. But one of their council members recently put out a newsletter, and again, we haven't been able to verify, the truth behind this, but she had indicated that the revenue offset for paying for the rides was about 10%. But if we're looking at a $610 million item, and they're saying, well, we could make 10% of that back, that's $61 million that could, in theory, come back into the RTA next.
For
So
expansion or whatever it might be.
So it is a very big question that they've been trying to not answer.
Shocker. So my question then is, if, this is a big if, obviously, we as a council did not support the RTA next ballot initiative, not ballot, to the voters or whatever, would we still be able to, what is our options for building these two roadways?
So that gets us into the next scenario that we would love to get your feedback on, and that's if the city and the region can't find a way to come together on a plan that works for everybody, at least everybody feels like they're sharing in the burden of regionalism, then what options do we have? And there's been several things kind of on the sidelines in hallway conversations put on the table, i.e., one of those would be the town of Marana is large enough to form their own municipal planning agency, like another PAG. Okay, they're big enough to qualify for that. And could Sahuarita and Oro Valley join up with that?
Maybe
And
the county.
perhaps the
Tucson is
county.
So difficult.
Okay, so that's an option, and the town of Marana they've been looking at that. You know, there are some difficulties, some obstacles that the county faces, because they're in a bit of a different situation and circumstance in terms of what they can and can't do. And so, you know, what would that look like? There have been other conversations about, like, Marana and Oro Valley just doing their own half-cent
Half-cent.
sales tax. And, of course, we would need to follow suit, but that's how we would pay for these projects over the period of 20 years, right?
Shane, I'd also like to offer, the mayor mentioned previously that one of the current issues is that because of the recession and because of the pandemic, that we started taking the regional funds that come into PAG. You have to be aware that PAG and the RTA are two separate organizations. So PAG, as our metropolitan planning organization, they get all of the regional funds that come from the state and elsewhere in our region, and then they are the ones that disperse that. But because we had a revenue shortfall due to the recession and due to the pandemic, the RTA, the regional board, which is the PAG board, decided to sweep the funds that were coming into the region to offset that shortfall. And they became, at that point, RTA funds to be used to complete the RTA projects. If there was no RTA next, moving forward, we could stop the sweep of
Right.
those funds. And coming into the region annually is somewhere between $45 and $60 million worth of a variety. You've heard AC talk about the color of money, funds ranging from kind of the clean money to, you know, the federal funds that we see.
RTA brings about $100 million a year. So it's, you know, in one way, yes, it's very important. But to me, it's important if we're doing the right things with it, right? And we're adding to transportation capacity and expansion and making it easier to get from point A to point B. I'm not so sure that's kind of where we are now, but again, that's why I wanted to, you know, get it out to the voters to hear what they would support at the end of the day. But, you know, my concern, again, to Beth's point is, early on, everybody agreed to sweep the PAG money because of the shortfall in the Great Recession. Well, now we're sweeping, in my opinion, more because of inflation and delaying these projects. It's not because we're not collecting what we did, and, you know, it's not my fault if you decided, you know, to take 8 years to get something, you know, accomplished where you should have.
That prevents us from being able to use it
Yeah.
for another project.
Yes.
Well, I will
Mayor-
tell you that I'm not in favor of that happening anymore.
One more, we're talking about options that have been floating around. The only other option that I've heard is, and this was most recently, is the county looking at just doing their own dedicated half-cent sales tax, so that Marana and Oro Valley and all of us agencies, we wouldn't have to do our own. They would just do a half-cent sales tax, and then they would become the pass-through in terms of the money allocation. So there'd have to be a defined plan, like what we're trying to do with the region on RTA. It would just be funneled through the county. So those are the only, I'm not advocating for one or the other. I'm just putting on the table the various options that I've heard to date in terms of what if RTA next doesn't happen for whatever reason.
So it sounds to me, if I can just maybe clarify a little bit, Tucson's not wanting to play with us very well anymore, like the region. Because it's now, everything you said here included Oro Valley and Marana, and you even included the county, which tells me the one that's really not playing well with everybody is Tucson at this point.
I'll just state that I haven't sensed a regionalism
Okay.
from the city,
Tucson.
in my experience.
Right.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't want to speak for the council. I'm just going to say my point that I trust you, Mayor, to make these decisions on what you need to do to help move more regionalism if we can get there. And if we cannot, that, to me, we can walk away and find other solutions. It sounds like there's already Plan Bs, Cs, and Ds being considered because it seems like we're almost to the brink that it's not going to happen. And if you need the support to say, yeah, go ahead and put in your support with Marana and Oro Valley, those that have more of the same fiscally responsible and transportation ideas in mind, not tearing out roads for bus rides, that doesn't make sense to me from our standpoint of here in Sahuarita. And so I'm in support of allowing you to have a little bit more oomph in your
Thanks, and I
decision-making.
hope you always know, but whether it's Beth or Shane or me or all three of us together, we're always looking through that filter of what I think, the citizens in the outlying areas in Sahuarita. And we are aligned with some of the other communities that are like-minded. But we, I appreciate that because we've spent, I can't even tell you how many, years and hours on doing it, but it's, we're coming down to, that's why, again, why I wanted that out for the voters, because we have to get back something to actually vote on and have those really difficult conversations, because we were spinning on the draft plan, which some of my fellow mayors didn't even think it was ready enough to go out. But, we would have busted all these timeframes if we didn't get something out and actually be, listening. So, they had one in Green Valley recently, and they're going to have one, is it the 3rd of December?
I believe it's the 3rd of December here.
Here. And we're pushing out the survey from PAG, to all of the, the residents to please, weigh in,
I didn't want to take over if anybody else
No.
has a message for them, or if you have enough. Do you feel like you
No,
have
I
enough?
do. Yeah, thanks. I always felt I did, but I wanted to make sure Shane thought it was really important with me to, now that we're really at the public input process, to put it in front of you to kind of catch you up. I know it's a lot to catch. We have 2 new people, and, I'm the one that goes to the meetings with Shane and Beth. So we just wanted to catch that up. It's been long and arduous.
Mayor, I think, Vice Mayor kind of, at least I think nicely summed it up, and it'd be great if, we maybe got a thumbs up, thumbs down from each of you in terms of.
I got a lot of head shakes.
Head shakes,
while-
you're
yeah,
good?
yeah.
Okay, all
I didn't
right.
get any thumbs down.
Okay, great.
Other than to stop talking. So having no more further business, we're adjourned. Thank you, and congratulations to both Councilmember Lisk and Lytle. Appreciate it.